Anyway, we're gonna bring the county government meeting to order. First up is MIF.
Hi, everyone. We're looking to fill a computer services specialist position due to a resignation.
Move it. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay, at least enjoyed the conversation.
I did.
Okay, next up is planning.
Okay. I have two resolutions. They have both to appoint a member to the Environmental Management Council. The first one is for the town of Chatham, the representative Frederick Wervase.
You wanna do them singly or you wanna do them both together? I think we do them both together.
And the second one is for the town of Livingston, and representative is Stan Yarian.
I'll move both.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right,
See you, Patrice. All right, get comfortable minutes.
let's slow it down a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Michael.
HR.
Got a whole list of them.
There's a big split here.
No, I promise several things. I love it.
Take your time.
Thank you.
All right, here we go. Where we starting? Where we starting?
Hello.
No, Michael's in the hot seat.
All right, I'm hot seating now. No, I don't have anything like controversial. All right, so this is, all right, so we had, pension revisions for elected and appointed officials attached to that. The documents should be their new ROAs that people were reporting.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Can I ask you? I always get confused whenever I look at these things. The part that says record of activities result, that's like their average week.
Yes, what happens is any time that someone either moves from one position to another in an elected or appointed position, they're gonna wanna do a new ROA because that's gonna record what they're doing for county-only business for the 3-month period.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Cool, thank you.
all right, no problem. All right, so the next one is for standard work for employees. So these could very well be same exact thing, establishing standard work days for that. These are new titles that were prepared.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Do you need to make it bigger?
No,
No, it's fine. I'm not there yet. Okay, so due to changes in recent legislation, including the Pump Act as well as the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, we respectfully would like to revise our Columbia County lactation policy. It provides a more descriptive and requirement need for individuals that are nursing to have, currently the way it was just that you had to have a private area, it had to lock, and you needed to make sure that you were removed from other business so that it was confidential. Now it's really supplying to ensure that make sure that there's electrical, make sure that they have accessibility to refrigeration to store milk. And one of the other things that they've done is change the requirement from traditionally, this is to new employees when they come in, as well as when a employee returns from either a pregnancy or a family medical leave act of being a paternal parent or maternal parent who didn't bear the child. They're educated on this. We will also be adding this to our annual mandated training as changes in the law.
Great. I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, and
And I have a follow-up question for that.
yeah, please do.
You mentioned electrical, like, are there things that we have to change in offices in order to be in compliance with this?
No, so traditionally what happens is most buildings would designate one office to be there. So we're just gonna kind of want to go around and help the department head in that building or heads, if it's a cumulative area, and have them ensure that they have something that is set up. If you have multiple nursing mothers, they can do that with a sign out versus some, if they have just a department, they'll put kind of a designated room. But it's much easier to have one room accessible and just have them sign out.
But we generally have a space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we won't be doing any renovations or anything for that. And certainly, with any policies in this is a county policy, but these are federal and New York State changes. So if anyone needs a copy of the policy for your town or for the city or for whatever, just contact our office. I'll be more than happy to share this with you guys, okay?
Okay.
All right. Okay, again, changes in the model for the sexual harassment policy. Governor Hochul has come out with revisions to what they have as being a model policy, and that includes revisions to the harassment policy and the complaint form. So we have revised this policy to be in with that. Again, I'm more than happy to distribute so people's towns can kind of highlight the difference and see what's going on in there. And then Holly will certainly train or can answer any questions in regards to
Are the
revisions.
training still applies, just the policy language changed?
Yes, there's just a couple of things in there about, different verbiage, and it's not really any major changes, but it's still required.
So we just have to change the policy,
Yes, you
not
would just,
retrain
no,
everybody.
no, well, you're required to retrain every year, so.
Right.
do
You got to
retrain,
to the
you
policy you've
get-
adopted.
Absolutely, right. So what we try to do is when we have these changes, we try to help the towns by saying, hey, here's our policy. And then that way you guys can adopt the same things. And then when you're training it, you would train
We have to
on
change
the,
our policies.
but you would train on the new policy.
Right.
There's so far, there hasn't been any requirement, like, okay, you just trained, you need to train again.
Right.
Yeah,
We just
no,
got through it.
no, you're
Yeah.
okay. You'll be okay. You'll be all right.
I'm with it.
Right, that's here.
You got a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
More paperwork or something.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so this is kind of exciting. So, poor Jim, our county controller, has had a number of staffing changes in his department due to, a retirement, which is great, from an individual getting another job, and then from a civil service testing situation. So he and I were kind of collaborating and putting things together. And our chief payroll clerk was always established at a set salary based on the individual who had held that position before. She had worked for the county for 30-something years. We have a fantastic person who is in that job now, looking for a challenge. Civil service has determined that her credentials, she would not have to test if she wanted to do the chief accounts payable clerk. So kind of talking with the employee as well as with Jim Bragg, it's a great opportunity for this person to be able to move into that office and add more seniority in there. And by doing so, I would like to not refill the chief payroll clerk, pardon me, I would like to do it as a payroll clerk. So the savings that I have, which is shown on the bottom, we would move that money budget-wise over to the controller's office for budget neutral. So this is the only union position that I do have in my office, and it is,
I'll move it.
it's approved by the
And the
union.
savings,
So,
this
It is.
15,954.
yeah, that's gonna come out of my budget.
I'll second it, and this went through point one.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And the union has also, approved as well,
All in favor?
as long as. the-
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Gosh, what's next? Okay, oh, well, this is exciting. Okay, so, we have formed an equal opportunity committee. Just kind of started with this, with a couple of representatives from different departments within the county that, equal opportunity greatly affects. So we start with, a survey that comes to one department, and they reach out to me and say, okay, EO, what do I do? You're EO officer for the county. So, and as we're kind of going through this Title VI, you guys just had the Title VI stuff come from transportation, from Jim Bragg's office, just did a revision of his plan. As a part of that is the requirement for a limited English proficiency plan. So the county is required to have an LEP. So myself, in accordance and in combination with Sherry Franks, as well as with Jim Bragg, kind of sat down and went through the information from our county planning department, as well as our latest census, and gathered information together to do a language English proficiency plan. So this is where we are.
What's that gonna look like? Is that gonna be a individual in each department, or is it gonna be that's gonna be able to help these folks?
No, so what this is this is in reference to an actual county statement that we are going to be putting the following, actually, if you don't mind, would you mind just going up a little bit?
Up or down?
Yeah, so you can see like the table, keep
I
going.
saw the table, that was interesting.
Yes, so this is actually taken directly from the 2020 census from Columbia County. And what it lists out is, there are 4 main criteria that have to be in this plan. This template is actually published by the federal government for that we then go into and put our information in. So it's a kind of an attestation from the county that we are taking limited English proficiency seriously, and that we're going to be taking steps to be working to reviewing this plan. And as a step of that with equal opportunity, It's in combination with our Americans with Disabilities Act policies. It's in combination with all of our Title VI processes. We are going to start doing equal opportunity training countywide. This building here implemented Language Line. We have offered training to all of our individuals within the building, had a successful opportunity with that. And now that we're done with our building, we're ready to start going onto other buildings to see if they have. Some are still using Google Translator services, and as long as that meets their needs, that's fine.
Yep.
We just want to make sure that they know that this is not just oh, it's nice to offer, it's a necessity. It's an absolute mandate that we need to ensure that people with English,
I'll move it.
not their primary
And
language.
it's also a tool in the box. It's not in the box. It's meant to be used.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's many county departments who are already utilizing this. DSS, mental health, the sheriff's office, they've had this in place. We just want to make sure everybody's on the same page.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carry.
Yeah, thanks for working on this.
Thank you. I think that's the.
It was an interesting chart.
Yeah, it really was.
Somebody
It
ever
was a
asked
fun
me,
project.
yeah.
So, that's it. We're
Okay.
done. Oh,
Thank you
we're
so
done.
much.
Thank you.
Probably Bill, but he would drop taxes and everything else. Make it easy.
I didn't see any 86-year-olds on that list. That was my last birthday, 86. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And as you can see, the Fair Housing Act was signed into legislation back in 1968. So that means we celebrated the 55th anniversary of commemorating fair housing. And as you know, that the Board of Supervisors each year issues a proclamation, which I picked up at the March meeting. We're very pleased to do that because we do join with our nation in commemorating fair housing, the Fair Housing Act legislation. It was signed into law on April the 11th, 1968. Fair Housing Month, as I say, we got the proclamation and we did some kickoff stuff to try to get some things rolling. We were so pleased that the state of emergency was lifted so that we could get back into doing our landlord tenants rights forum and posters contest in person. And I invite you to go to our website, the Fair Housing website, because there is a summary out there of the landlord tenants rights forum and also the poster contest. Landlord tenants rights forum we had it at the Hudson High School Library on March the 29th. And then the poster contest, we had our awards presentation at Montgomery C. Smith Elementary School on April the 26th. So if you'd like to go to the website, you can read about those two things. The community outreach, we had back in the third week of February, we were on a radio program and had our kickoff there as to what we'd be doing for our landlord tenants rights forum and the poster contest, and basically what we do for fair housing. And of course, fair housing really equaled the playing field, very significant legislation equaling or, equalizing the playing field for particularly our minority population and what fair housing calls protected classes and so forth, which includes disability, it includes national origin, and of course the state goes even further in that. The Division of Human Rights even goes into further what protected classes or characteristics are there. And along with the community outreach, we had, in conjunction with Fair Housing, we put a letter to the editor with contact information in there as far as who to contact, whether it be HUD, the Division of Human Rights, and of course myself as Fair Housing to, for people to know what their rights are, should they be discriminated against. And it's just not this discrimination issue, but we also advise people based on their what their rights are as tenants in accordance with the Attorney General's office. And there's been a new publication on that because there were considerable more protections put into place in the laws of 2019 as far as tenants are concerned. So there is a new publication out on that. And certainly any meetings that we have or go to, we always bring our tenants' rights guide, supply of those, along with also the anything that HUD puts out as far as discrimination and human rights is concerned. So I did attend a meeting with the Columbia Green Housing Coalition, and the theme of that meeting was unhoused to house. And they have a number of not-for-profits that do partner with them. And since the year 2005 to the present time, they've been able to come up with over $6 million in grant money to try to house the homeless and so forth over the years. There were about 25 organizations there, and of the 25, 18 did speak, and everybody had a good message and was on point in that regard. As far as the calls received and returned are concerned, what we're getting a lot of, unfortunately, is rent increases. People having to find other places to live or face eviction because they can't pay these new rent amounts. $200 is not unusual in an increase over their current rent. I've got them as high as people call in as high as 500 or even close to doubling their current rent. So this is a real problem that we're facing now. And it appears that market rents are what a willing tenant and a willing landlord are willing to come to a meeting of the minds on is what's determining these very high rent increases. So, we're getting a lot of that and the usual calls. And again, when these rents go up, oftentimes there's a problem with the landlord providing the warranty of habitability, which is any repairs that need to be made and so forth. So you would think for the money that, some of these tenants are having to pay, that, there would be no question about the improvements. The only thing is going through the moratorium. When there was the moratorium on paying rents because of either increased expenses or loss of income, the landlords were still responsible, had that obligation of doing the repairs and whatever the case may be. So we're getting a lot of that, and reasonable accommodations for the disabilities. I had a situation where the elevator went in the building, and of course you have people with disabilities, and reasonable accommodations have to be made for them. And one particular case, I actually wanted to put, I knew on the third floor there was someone that was wheelchair bound, and I wanted to be sure they got on the the fire department's list in case there was a problem there. That's the first thing that went. But fortunately, I did have a connection, even though the management had changed at this particular facility. I had a connection from another facility that I had dealt with over the years, and was able to make contact with him, who's now working for the new company. So that worked out. And finally, after a month or so, it was, finally after a month or so, I think probably even 6 weeks, that elevator was back in function.
I think Brenda has a question.
Yes,
Is there a
Brenda.
question?
I did, and in terms of the calls that you're receiving in terms of renting, is that located to one geographic area or is it pretty much across the county?
I would say it's pretty much across the county,
Okay.
you know. Certainly Hudson has its fair share of calls, but across the county. But there's, you know, some of it is non-payment of rent, which accelerates all kinds of eviction, accelerates the eviction proceeding. Fortunately, with the laws of 2019, it's the length of time, in a case where they just want to, let's say, not renew the lease with the tenant or get the tenant out or whatever, and are not paying, not in a non-payment situation, but they just want to get them out. It depends on the length of residency, how long the tenant must be given to move. Under a year, the landlord can give 30 days, a year and a half, they have to give 60, and then around 2 years, it moves up to 90 days. So that has helped tenants, hopefully, in giving them more time. And what's happening, I see with, you know, what I learned from conversations with attorneys and judges and so forth, is that as soon as a tenant walks in on a non-payment situation, the landlord's going to sort of automatically say, come back in 2 weeks. And in addition to that, if a warrant of eviction is issued and law enforcement goes, and I know that I believe Sheriff's Department in this county is behind on that type of thing. But if they go on the date of the warrant of eviction, they will, and still find the person there, they will say, I'm coming back in 2 weeks and I expect you to be out then. So it appears that a normal eviction is now at least 4 weeks, given those two, you know,
Conditions.
types of things, conditions, yeah.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, Bill, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Good report. Thank you.
Thank you.
So did you say that the, given the Supreme Court decision about foreclosures that New York, did anybody else hear this, that New York State has decided to put a moratorium on foreclosures for the next, through the end of the year or for a year, for the year?
I haven't read the details, and I don't think it's been signed into law yet.
Right. But it's coming, so that may also affect your
Mhm.
population.
And the foreclosures, actually, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae were putting a moratorium on, or what they call the forbearance agreement. And that forbearance agreement gave, it was initially good for 6 months during the moratorium, and then it could be renewed for another 6 months. And so those who, you know, they were getting a year on any foreclosures. And foreclosures take a long time. I had a case where a foreclosure took place in October of last year, and the individual still had occupancy for, you know, long after that, so.
I just remember a couple of the Habitat families were, the houses, they were losing their houses because the houses were being foreclosed and they were kind of at the end of the food chain. They were renting in houses that were being foreclosed and they found out at the end of the process. So it was tough to find a new place to live.
Yeah, I want to mention too that Section 8 or subsidized housing did not come under the ERAP program, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. But my last conversation with the call center, the ERAP work center, which was only recently, said that even though the window of opportunity to apply closed on January 20th of this year, they are able to process and have money now to process any applications that came through there. And in addition to that, subsidized housing wasn't covered, but now they're saying that they expect any applicants like Housing Choice people through Section 8 that made applications are now, they're going to review their applications for some assistance, so.
Do you remember what that number was? We were trying to figure out that number in the last housing meeting, how many Section 8 vouchers? How many people qualify?
Yeah, I don't remember that. I remember it being discussed.
The problem is not the money now, it's the housing, finding that.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's, you know, it takes a while to get up on the housing choice voucher list. And then when you're approved, to go out and try to find something, it's just, and within their, you know, they have prices for one bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. So it's just so difficult to find something within that dollar amount.
But they have been extending the eligibility so they don't lose their place,
Yes, they have.
which is something.
And we have, housing, in the 12534 area code, which is Hudson.
Right.
But it takes in more than Hudson because of the 12534. And then, we have the central office in Saratoga Springs. You know, so they can go through, if you get approved in the 12534, you have to stay a year in that residence before you can take your housing choice vouchers
Someplace
and
else.
go someplace else.
Any other questions? Thank you, Bill.
Okay.
Anything from the board?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I wanted to introduce this. I know it's last minute, but this would be the committee where this would start. As the state legislature closed out the year, one of the bills they passed at the end of the thing is going to affect the dates in which any of us would have to run for election in county races. They're trying to make it run all on even years where the state elections are held. And that law, even though it has been passed by both Assembly and Senate, hasn't been signed by the governor. This law is asking the governor not to sign that or to veto it. I don't know if there's any much chance of that or not, but this resolution was sent to me from Saratoga County where they had passed it. And I wanted to bring it to our county government committee to see if there was any interest in it. Not only do I think it puts an undue burden on our board of elections, and Kelly is here. But speaking on that, I think it takes away from the importance of many of our local races that we all participate in, where we've always had the advantage of running in an odd year like this year, where we can talk about our own issues and whatnot. If you bury that into the issues that are going on in a statewide election year, I just think it takes away from the importance of our local elections, you know, and I don't see why we don't continue to keep them, I don't know, on an even year, you know. I don't know if we've got any chance of getting the governor to listen to us, but I thought the resolution was well drafted and just stated some of the facts.
But in, with local elections, because the terms are staggered, they're half in even years and half in odd years, right?
No, they're not yours.
It's,
Locals.
so, but I run every 2 years, so.
Right, but you're always in odd years,
Okay,
Yes.
but now they want to change that to even years.
So there may be the a possibility too, where you might have to run 2 years in a row.
would you, because in order, I think I spoke to, the Board of Elections about this, the short terms, the 2-year terms would be the first to be addressed, and then they, instead of a 2-year term, it would be a 1-year term.
Right.
Is that correct? Yes. Right, so it's the 2-year terms that would.
So like Matt says, eventually we would have to run, you know,
Be like 1-year term, something.
So everybody, even the 4-year terms would have to run 1 year?
No, that would be, I think, a
Maybe
2-year
3,
term.
maybe
Right?
3-year term.
Right, a 3-year term, that's
Right.
one
It's
year.
either be like one
shorter
There'll be
term.
one cycle where you
Right.
shave off a year in order to get everyone on the even years.
Right.
I mean, it sounds messy in the beginning. I kind of like the idea of everyone of having even years and not having every year an election year. I think there's something interesting about that. So I'm not sure if I oppose what the state is doing.
I haven't made up my mind either, but I also think that because the turnout is so much lower in odd years, that fewer people vote, and so there are fewer voices that are heard in those years. So in one sense, you hear from more people in even years.
And we're always trying to encourage more voter turnout. I don't think anybody objects to that, but, you know, I do think that there could be a different turnout on local election, you know, when we're running and we have friends and neighbors that know when we're running, they'll come vote for us, you know. If it's a statewide election, they might vote for different people.
Well, I'm on record because I was quoted in the paper being opposed to it. I just think local issues will get lost when you have to run in a presidential year or a governor's year. I think the local issues will get lost. And they talk about it being less expensive. I don't see that.
It can't be about money.
So explain to me, please, explain to me, so what you're saying here is that on the off years when we run, odds are people won't go out and vote because it's not an election year for the president or for something more important. Is that what you're
I think
saying?
you stated it more positively than I did. I think that historically, we see lower turnouts in off-year elections. Isn't that accurate?
Well, it's not called them
Off-year
off here,
elections
let's
have-
call them local.
Well,
No, no, no.
Right, I was just gonna say, we're all on
right, but
off
it is
year,
an
so.
off-year cycle. It's the odd years.
The odd year,
versus-
yeah,
Right,
yes.
so the odd years show lower turnouts historically.
Since I've been here, it seems to go by party.
Yeah.
Turnout, one party, turns out higher than the other. But there are also other things to consider. There's a lot more work, that goes into a presidential election. The workload is higher.
How many ballots do we end up having, you know?
There'd be
I'm
a
not
chance of people being left off.
I'm not sure, how we would address that. Could be a very packed ballot. It could be 2 ballots. I don't know exactly how it would work. I know they're also talking about, instead of just absentee, they're talking about mail-in early voting. There's just a lot of things that are being considered, but I don't think the workload is really being considered.
I was gonna say, that's almost gonna double it up on what you'd have to do with doing it, because you gotta take care of the main election plus our little elections.
Well, and we also have, we're opening absentees now every 4 days. We're scanning absentees at the beginning of early voting and at the end of early voting. I don't know what the process will look like for mail-in early voting. I don't have a whole lot of information on actually.
You know what bothers me is, I know the changes are good things and all this, but we've been doing this, I've been around here for how long doing these elections, and I don't see a problem. Yeah, way too. I agree. No, I agree, but I'm just saying is, I haven't ever seen a problem. I mean, you could say, well, it's off that people don't show. People have that, they don't have to vote if they don't want it. That's what Americans all or vote, they don't want to vote, it's just trying to pick more votes. Why change it? That's all
I
I'm
think
saying.
as the ballot goes, the things at the end generally are not gonna get picked up.
Yeah, actually, where
So
would
that
we
is.
be?
On the back of the ballot.
So your local elections are gonna have.
Less
struggled-
important. So you lost.
Push
Struggled to get notice.
Absolutely.
And that is, I think, always the issue. You're done. And then I do think the ballots could actually get pretty long.
Referendum.
Yeah, what concerns me
Yeah.
about it is the lack of input, local input. We talked to Kelly and Kelly said that they hadn't been contacted. What I read from other legislators was they hadn't been contacted. So there wasn't a lot of input into this process.
This is one of those 11th-hour things.
It was a sort of a surprise to a lot of people.
Saratoga?
The resolution was drafted by Saratoga. I don't know where else they got it. I don't know where else it's been. I thought last week when I first heard that this happened, I thought it was all done, but then I heard the governor hadn't signed it, and there was some pressure on, trying to encourage her not to sign it or veto it.
What's the feeling if we don't, we send a letter? I mean, you think she's gonna
We
sign
still
it?
may
or no?
sign it, but at least we're on record as saying that we're not, that we're opposed to the concept.
Can you explain the exclusion? Unfairly excludes elections to offices in New York City and all other cities and villages. So this wouldn't,
Well,
be excluded?
As it was explained to me in New York City, the reason that they excluded New York City, but one of the potential reasons they excluded it is the fact that way, a lot of times when you're on the New York City Council, you have term limits. So a lot of those people who are term limited out run for the assembly. So this gives them the opportunity without.
It doesn't.
They-
promote-
they-
Which isn't
They would keep
necessarily,
the odd years down there in the city.
it's not
But it says
necessarily
all
fair to the
other-
rest of us.
All other cities, so. is
Because that's
Hudson
done by
excluded?
constitution, is that right, Kelly?
So
Is
is
that-
Hudson excluded? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, I think my understanding of the election terms, some of the election terms are determined by the state constitution.
Yep.
So the legislature doesn't have the power to change the constitutionally mandated elections. So there's a certain class of elections that, like, because you need to pass a resolution into like 2 assemblies in a row
Right,
to change the constitution. So I think my understanding is that there's a certain gap that they are like, we can't touch those, but we're going to go ahead and do these now. And we'll do the constitutional ones like over the next.
right.
Which
Back to
is, which is your DA, your sheriff, your
County
county
clerk.
clerk. Those are constitutional, your sheriff. But I don't know if New York City, they might have their own constitution, but I don't think that, you know. their
Yeah, I don't think they wanted to
constitution
change
handles-
theirs.
And
They
the
could
village-
change
the village
those if they
elections
wanted
are
to,
A
but
different time of the year.
During March, that's why they're
March,
So
excluded.
that's why they're excluded.
No, but I'm just thinking that starts to look very uneven in Columbia County because we have the villages, then we have the city of Hudson, and then we have the towns. So that makes it more complicated.
Does the city have a different fee or do they?
They do odd.
Or the same.
Yeah, everything's every all terms are 2 years.
but the supervisors would be a county race, really,
Right,
so
yeah.
it's, you know, like your common council.
Yeah, right,
elections.
Right.
Yeah.
Why don't they leave it to the county?
So could we?
That's part of what this says. Yeah, I mean, they did say in here that, I mean, it's always been an option for counties to do that. If it was a good- if it was good for us or it was a good idea, we would have done it years ago.
Well, this puts us on record for opposing it. We're gonna go for it.
Yeah.
Enter it. Make a motion to
I'll second it.
look this till we learn more about what, this is all new to me, so.
So could we, is there a possibility of deleting a couple of the whereases?
Yeah, we'll have time
Sure.
next.
So it has to go to finance next.
So by next week.
Because I was thinking that, I mean, I just don't like the political nature of legislation passed in the middle of the night. I prefer to stay away from statements like that.
It was, though.
It was true.
Even so, I just think that's kind of below the belt
Okay.
kind of stuff. And also, does it usurp home rule if the state has the power to do this? Does it usurp home rule?
Well, we've always had the ability to do it, now they're telling us to do it. So it does,
In essence, that is home rule describes what one has and what one doesn't have, right? So you're saying it's by fiat, it's not usurping home rule, it's enforcing home rule.
That's what I'm asking. I don't know. And I was not
Taking
aware
away
that
home
local
rule.
municipalities had the authority to change their election cycles. Because every time we've got 2 justices on the same cycle, and every time we tried to change it, we were told we didn't have the authority to change it. So I'm not sure that's an accurate
And
statement.
I think that's dictated by.
yeah, judges is different than your town board members.
Okay,
Like you can change your supervisor seat to be a 4-year term or
I
when
know we
you,
can change the length of the term. We're doing that for our highway superintendent this year, but I don't know that we can change even or odd number year terms.
I have been told since this was being talked about, I have heard that you could, that the county could or towns could.
I just would like it to be accurate. If we're gonna go on record, I'd like to know
Sure.
for sure.
So we have a
So I have
Motion
3
and a
things
second, so.
with 3 requested changes.
Minor edits.
So how you want to word this? So with the changes in place
Just
or
delete, I would
just
like to.
the board is
propose
just up
delete
to
the 3
say-
changes, right. The 3 whereases, the middle of the night usurps home rule, and municipalities have had the ability to change their elections. I mean, I think.
Can we ask for a legal opinion on that?
I like that, yeah.
You know, I
Okay,
think that Rob did read this over and said that it was fine. So we can dig into that a little bit more and I don't want to.
And we can always, if we have to correct it or update it, we can do it at finance.
Yeah.
And it's got to, then it's, if it goes through finance, it'll have to be voted again by the full boards.
Right.
right, but I always hate to make these kind of changes at that late in the game. I prefer to express my opinion up front.
So do I, Brenda, thank you.
Yeah.
But I
So-
don't
so-
mind, I
So
don't
we're
mind
gonna get
middle of
a-
the night, I think if that is what it was, or you could say without input from local
Yep.
Maybe
Yeah,
that's-
vote from any, yeah.
We do that in the paragraph above, I think, or somewhere in there that says that local officials were not, where is it?
Failed to reach out to,
There were no hearings held.
No hearings after a commitment to make the whole hearings, I think it says.
Okay, so are we saying that we will let the attorney look at this to see if the changes can be made legally, but we'll accept it as is,
I
except
think
for
Brenda's
that?
questioning the home rule powers, wording.
And even, and the ability for towns to change their elections to even number of years. The middle of the night thing is subjective. It's not a legal opinion, I don't think.
Right.
So we're working on the concept of passing this resolution.
Is this modeled after some other town or?
Yeah.
I got it from Saratoga County.
So it's going around.
They might have gotten it from NICEAG.
Yeah.
What shall pass this around?
The county clerk, who's passing, who's not.
Okay, so I got a first and a second. Everybody's on board with what we're doing?
Yeah, and if we make
With the changes.
modifications. prior to finance.
Notifications, yep. Which again, it goes to full board anyway. And we can decide that either, I know what Brenda's saying, but right, make the changes now.
But Brenda, maybe reach out and talk to Rob on the legalities
I'm
of
happy
that, and if there's different wording, please share it with finance and.
I
Okay,
mean, otherwise, I think you made a good case.
I'm gonna abstain.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mike's abstaining.
I'm abstaining as well.
Brenda's abstaining. You get in trouble if you argue with the governor now, right? You lose your next year's job, right?
Okay, anything else? Need a motion to adjourn. I know we're early. but-
So next finance meet next.
Next.
Excuse me, open to the public, I'm sorry.
All right. With this, the voting were on even years. Do you think that a lot of people, since they're concentrating more on the governor or president election, and they might get all wrapped up in a certain party, they might just automatically, when they get to the local election, then they might automatically just vote for whoever was the party of the main guy they voted for, without even paying attention to what the local person was saying on the local issue. They might just, and so in a way, it would increase the power, the uniformity of a party, of a political party being that whichever candidate wins in the main election, it might increase the power of that person's party.
I think that's one factor that could happen, but there are other factors.
It may depend on how this ballot gets laid out.
Right.
And if they're gonna
Where are
actually
the
turn it
meetings?
over, we may be getting lost in it too.
You're kind of assuming that somebody's gonna start with as a top candidate and vote party line, and certainly some people do vote party line right on through. I think that we always see, in local elections, people vote for the candidate more than they do the party line. You don't know your state candidates, you haven't met your assembly person, but you're gonna vote Republican or Democrat because that's what you do. But in a local election, people get to know the people, whether you're in a town or county race, and you vote for that person based on their qualifications and what they've done. So,
It's more about the person than the party.
exactly, yeah. And it's kept it local, but that's one of the reasons to keep it to keep it separated in my mind, but.
I always feel it's not broken, why fix it? It's been working for how many years?
Yeah.
Someone's gonna throw something else in there for whatever reason. Does it make it better? Who knows? We don't know.
Good question.
I know people that go in and vote for one person and walk out the door. And
I do too.
you never know. Yeah, so, that's it.
A number of our tax assessors are getting really anxious on this fireman's exemption that the county passed and pleading and slowing us down to not adopt it because of some language in it. Has anybody else gotten some?
We're passing ours. I mean, we're working on it
We
right now.
changed the language. You just talk about the school district wording, that's all.
Some of that.
We took that out.
Yeah, and against particular case, we have 4 fire districts that we.
But we don't have the ability to change, when you talk about trying to change it so that we can incorporate people out of district. The state did tell us there's piloting right now,
So
so.
can you explain this to me? What is it about because ours is going to public hearing in July.
And that's what, we were gonna move ours forward and then so what made the news yesterday? Gilderland? Was it Gilderland? They denied it and they're getting sued now. By some, it was on the
But
news.
Greg, help me understand what the issue is.
It's various, it's almost like what you picked out, sometimes it's hard to format a one
Size fits all.
size fits all. I argued that the counties fits Ghent. And I'm getting some pushback on,
But is it eligibility? Is it income? Is it the amount that the taxpayer
it's
will?
eligibility.
I think it's eligibility.
Eligibility.
Where they live, that's the biggest, I think, because they don't live in the town.
We have a lot of residents in Stuyvesant that live in the town of Stuyvesant, belong to Skoda Landing Fire Company or vice versa. And if they live in Stuyvesant and they belong to Skoda Landing Fire Company, they cannot get their exemption in the town of Stuyvesant, because they belong to a district that doesn't serve our town. And that wording was not put together well by the state in that. But again, this is one of those things that we adopted it because it's a tool and it helps some people.
No, that's what I call an unintended consequence.
Yeah,
They're not, they don't have boots on the ground, so they don't
No,
understand
they don't know
how
this.
people migrate across city lines.
I'm hoping that if we can make enough noise out of that, that our legislators can take that back and change it in the future. Because to me, what we're trying to do is increase volunteerism. And if you're a volunteer, then you should get your exemption if that's what the intention was. But
Well, the other thing is, they have a choice between the property tax exemption and the income tax credit.
Right.
And if they can't get the property tax exemption, they can get the
right,
income tax
exactly.
credit. And if they're two firemen or three firemen in the house, two firemen in the house, they can both get an income tax credit, which is going to be higher than the property tax exemption. So
Unless we can get the schools to get on board. with
unless
this.
Dee Dee's bill goes through, which is to make sure that the firemen get both the income tax credit, but that's not done yet.
No.
So I think the question is, what if you could share with me maybe offline what language it is that is concerning, I'll make sure that we highlight that in our discussions in the hearing. But
Well, my
the
challenge
fact is we still need to retain and recruit the ones we can. And
Wow.
then we incorporate the others as we can, but we need to get to the core group first.
I'm happy to hear any suggestions, but I did chase this up the flagpole with our attorney. And, we knew that there was going to be some specific issues with the fire members, not serving everyone. And I met with both our fire chiefs and talked about that too, but the state legislation didn't allow us to change the wording, so I wanted to change the wording to incorporate more of the firemen within our district, but our attorney said that doesn't allow you to do that.
What did the attorney say about the intent of the law? Because the intent of the law is for the volunteer firefighters in your town to get the
Exactly,
exemption.
yeah, but the
So what do you
legislators
think about
drafted it with language that didn't work. So as you say, unintended consequences is a good example. So,
Well, I think, we almost have to pass it with the idea that hopefully they'll come back and
right.
fix
Clean
the
it
town
up.
road.
Yeah,
And that gives us an opportunity for a conversation with our assembly and senate person.
as we can tell people, now we've got people it doesn't work for, but the intention was to help
Right.
them. And
We need to pick up the balance.
right, yeah, it's a small change they could
Yeah.
make, but the state has to authorize us to do that.
Can
That's
they
my
do it? And they come back in the fall, right? What's the assembly?
They may come back early. I know that the assembly was talking about pulling them back during the summer.
So maybe if we could get a letter out.
Back down?
they-
The assembly's back now,
Are they?
Yeah.
Yeah, but just for a little bit, right?
Yeah, Senate's
For a little bit, then come back.
Yeah, they come back in. They
So
came back for
technically, I'm
some,
right, it is summer now, so.
they need their vacation. Besides the raise, they need their vacation.
Was there something else, Craig, that
No,
came up? That was mostly
wondered,
the.
I'm on I was ready to go forward with the same thing and it's just been getting a bump back, saw it on the news.
Can the chairman write a letter pointing out this gap
Yeah.
that we could get to them while they're in session now?
So,
So I assumed that would use you guys. I figured if I'm getting it, you guys are getting
I haven't
it.
heard a peep, but we haven't had our public hearing.
I'm
We
aware
got
of it,
ours
but
coming up too.
We actually had our public hearing, we adopted it in Stuyvesant, it went by fine, but the fire chiefs were aware that it doesn't work for everybody. You know.
We decided to put it off until we could get things ironed out.
Yeah.
Because we have till December. Because it won't go into effect.
Don't tell them that, because he wants to come wait for that.
So have we adjourned?
No, we're not, we gotta
They're gonna
readjourn.
send out exemptions in October,
I'm
so.
not sure, Greg, in short term, it will get ironed out. You mean ironing it out with your constituents?
Yeah.
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 But the state's not gonna change
Well,
anything.
the legislation session ended, right?
So you have to reside and serve in the same municipal
Yeah,
boundary.
right.
Unless you serve 20 years or more, is it?
So you might have to have a higher ratio of out-of-district residents.
I think I very.
It depends where you live. The line's right here, you know, I mean.
And if there is, from what I understand from Suzette, if there is a paid contract, so, you know, I'm using my town, so in the town of Stuyvesant, our Stuyvesant Falls Fire District takes care of some of the town of Kinderhook's residents, and they're paid by the town of Kinderhook, village of Kinderhook, to provide that service. So in that case, this law can work for them.
Right.
But if it's just a mutual aid agreement, that doesn't cover it. So
Having fire protection districts, how does it work there?
that can work if there's a paid contract.
Okay,
So if there's a
Is that
fire
the way it
protection district and you live in the fire protection district, and then that.
so who
district-
pays?
Oh,
What I'm asking is who pays? The town where that's hired them or the town that has it? If I'm hiring a
Where they
fire
live or
protection,
rent.
I'm hiring a church down to cover my district,
Wherever
who
they
does-
pay their property taxes.
so it'd be in their town, would have to do it.
So that's part of the confusion now.
Yeah.
But you're applying to the assessor where you live.
Right.
But the assessor where you live has to be able to say, like, you got a note from your fire company that says you serve at a fire company that provides service in the municipality that you reside. So,
I just, didn't have wasn't able to really have the conversation, and
yeah.
our assessor tried to throw all the stuff at it. She went as far as the,
Too confusing.
lawyer, she called the lawyer that was on the TV.
Mhm.
What's your problem? What are you seeing? What could have been fixed?
So really, it's the people that are left behind.
And the guy was great with her. She said,
Who's your assessor?
Lynn, I'm telling you. She'll tell you all about it.
I'm gonna ask her now. Yeah. Thought we had no problem, Lynn, you know,
Right.
she's kidding, so, okay.
She'll tell
He
you.
reads too well, so.
I know. She's very good at her job.
We backed off. We're gonna ask Lynn and Suzette to come in and go through it all again now.
But it's also interesting, I had all of our we have 3 fire companies, and I provided them with the language so that they could look at it, and I didn't get anything back from them. So I think whoever said it you may have more exceptions than
Right.
most towns, because our fire companies all looked at it, and they've all been.
Everybody's got a different
Counting
situation in
heads.
Public County, you know?
But they've all been counting heads to see who would be eligible. So-
Right.
And that identifies who wouldn't be eligible and why.
The problem is the members that live in the town want it. The members that are outside the town want it, they can't have it, so they're gonna throw whatever they can do to disrupt this to see if we can get it to pass.
And then you got all the young guys don't own any property, can't get it anyway,
So I think, like you said, we pass what we can and
Right.
fight for the rest
We
of
do
it,
it, yeah.
because otherwise you'll have a
Oh,
big
there's
fight.
nothing.
That's right.
And if schools get on board, we have to all keep at our school districts, because as you say, the state income tax level is greater right now, but if the school gets on board, it could be significant.
See, that's what's difficult in my town, because we have 2 school districts.
Yeah.
One's on board and the other one isn't. The other one is never.
Everybody.
But they elected new school board members purposefully. They ran on campaigns to support this exemption. So we'll see
Okay,
if
well,
they do.
good. It may work for you then.
It's too bad they just can't have a fee that everybody gets or
Income tax.
income tax deduction.
They've had that opportunity, for income tax, but
It's not big enough.
it's not.
It's
I know,
$200,
it's
it's $200 a person a year.
Yeah.
400 if you're filing joint.
Well, you can't get both. You gotta get one.
Not now, but he
Right
pays
now.
a bill.
Well, right, if they
So
pass
it's moving good.
But that's not for the same for everybody.
It's
That's what I mean. It's all unfair anyway.
Right,
So
it
it'd
is.
be better just to say, here, you're gonna get this amount. Be done with it.
Yeah.
A lot of
Otherwise,
legislation. It's a lot of legislation to get this through.
Shouldn't be.
3
I
different
think it'd be
levels of
simple.
Well, it's also
You know,
lots of things.
Percentage
Here,
to that.
here's $500.
Yeah. be done.
Do your thing. Goodbye.
Keep it simple.
Well,
Yeah.
you said it, it's a Band-Aid on a, non-funded mandate that all these folks have to put in hundreds of hours of training for And they're volunteers.
For Rick's point's also a good one. If this is supposed to be a recruitment tool, most of the kids that are being recruited don't own property.
That's right, yeah.
So that's the biggest.
But it helps. I mean, it's,
A little bit helps, better than nothing.
Right.
Had nothing for
That's
so
right.
long. Anybody else got from the board anything you want to bring up before so we can adjourn? I would like one if I could.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye. All right, I want to call the June Public Works meeting to order. Welcome to the first day of summer and our Public Works meeting. Well, first we have a discussion presentation from Centrica with Mitch Scott and can't remember. Ryan, there you go. Sorry about that. Seems like I've met with these guys enough times, I'd remember their names all the time, but you know. But anyway, they're gonna do up first, and we've been talking about a project that they've been developing at DSS for us. And I will turn it over to Mitch.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. You want us to sit? Come over.
Sure, whatever you want to do.
How
Yeah.
do you throw over there? There we go. Let's sit right
I want
here.
to slide back so I can watch the video.
Go ahead, Michelle. We've done this enough times. I think you guys are familiar with us. Well, thank you for the time this evening. I know you guys are used to seeing us here at least a couple times a year, looking at some of your buildings. We've had some really good success at various buildings. The last two at the DPW, DMV, and Treasury Office, which have gone very, very well. So now we're here to talk about the DSS building. Last time we brought this to you guys, it was a preliminary look at what we thought would make sense to upgrade the building from an energy efficiency and even a renewable standpoint. We're now back with actually a final scope and build ready numbers and a scope of work to take you through. So Kelly, if you want to, I'm going to turn it over to Scott Clark, who's our engineer, to take you through the full list. And certainly, as always, interrupt whatever question you guys have. We want to make sure when we're done, all questions are addressed and, you know, there's nothing outstanding there.
So thank you everybody for your time again tonight. I'll try not to go too fast, but also not take up too much time. I know you've got a lot on your agenda today. So as Mitch mentioned, last time we were here, we went over our PFA or preliminary feasibility assessment. Just as a quick refresher, the items we looked at as part of that assessment. This is kind of the full laundry list of everything that we looked at. I am going to go in more detail on each of these items a little bit later, so I won't necessarily talk about all. I don't want to go into super detail on this slide, but essentially this is really, we looked at putting on a solar array on the roof, a new roof on the building, fixing sort of the building envelope, some of the items where there were some ceiling issues between the windows and what's called the EFIS, what's the exterior insulation system that's on the building. Putting in a new building automation system or controls, so to replace the thermostats that are there, and then really all of the mechanical systems other than the two new units that were just installed a little bit earlier this year. So all those were kind of broken out separate. And then also looking at gutter guards on the building to try and help with some of the debris that's there. So that was kind of our big picture overview. We were going to investigate and price all of those things.
Excuse me, how old is this building?
So this building was constructed early 90s, I believe. I want to say it's probably mid 90s.
90, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
33 years.
Yes, so it's 30, and pretty much everything there is original still. I know the boilers are, the chiller is original, and the air handling units, two of them were just replaced, but everything else is kind of on its own. Yeah. So from what we've looked at, and we took a look and try to run the numbers on what would make sense and kind of fit within the budgetary items we laid out before. If you can go ahead to the next slide. So this is really the finalized scope, which really has everything that's in here as part of that initial list, other than the gutter guards and doing some window sealing over at the 325 building. And so I know that one seems a little bit out of pocket, but per the request, when we've done some talking with Brian, that there are some issues with the window seals at that building. If we were going to have someone here working at DSS, we were going to see if they could do some work there. That didn't really fit in with what we were hoping to look for budget-wise. The gutter guards are out because the manufacturer of the gutter system said it would void the warranty. They're concerned in a commercial setting you can get some ice buildup, and that would actually rip the gutters off the building if their stuff got stuck. So as much as it might help eliminate some maintenance burden, it wasn't really worth the idea of trashing your brand new setup that was on the building. So we pulled those out of the scope. If you go to the next slide, please. So one of the items I know you talked about that everyone was interested in is looking at a roof-mounted solar array. So what we came up with after some additional modeling and looking around is a 74 kW DC array, which is 50 kW AC. And right now that puts about 25% of the current building load is what would be offset. As you may notice, the entire building is not covered in panels, which we had originally looked at. It turns out when we did our interconnection application with National Grid, the feeder that serves this building is currently oversubscribed, which means there are a number of other large solar farms that are already in line ahead of us to come online within this building, or within the same substation and the same transmission line. And the way that it works to interconnect in New York State is kind of first in line, you reserve your place. There are 2 5-megawatt solar arrays. I think there's a 5-megawatt battery, and then some other 4 and 3 megawatt systems that are in line. So our system, which originally would have been around 100 kW AC, is pretty dinky in comparison. The issue would have been that the county would have needed to pay to upgrade the substation, and you would have gotten very, very minimal benefit out of it. So after some discussion, we are able to reduce the size to 50 kW, and then the county does not have to pay for any substation upgrades. We're basically just allowed to be onto the network, or we're allowed to net meter, as it'll be. So we're still going to offset a lot of load from the building itself. And then at times of low load, when there's still sun production, you spin your meter backwards and you get that as a credit on your bill. In the event that National Grid does upgrade the substation down the road, if one of the other developers either pays to do an upgrade or they withdraw their project, and now you're allowed, there is room on the roof to expand the size of the system. And we're designing it such that the interconnection point in the building, you can still use that and connect a larger system. So that was I'd say one of the biggest hurdles / hiccups was working through negotiating that with National Grid. So we were hoping to be here last month, and that's the reason for it, was we were trying to finalize what we could do here. So if you want to go ahead and go to the next one. So FIM 2 that goes along with that is actually replacing the existing roof that's there now. They kind of go hand in hand. So this existing membrane, so far so good, has been okay up there for you guys. But it is now 30 years old at this, but maybe a little bit less because there's actually a metal roof underneath the rubber roof. And so this is going to be expected that really you shouldn't have much more useful lifetime out of it. Given that the county wants to stay in the building, it's something we felt it was a good time to look at it also to support the solar. So our scope would include ripping off the entire membrane that's here now. And actually underneath this membrane is a gypboard, kind of like sheetrock. It has been used as filler in between what's standing seam roofing. So there's, and then there's a layer of basically polyiso styrofoam, or not polyiso, EPS styrofoam. So there's foam insulation, gypsum board, and then the black roof you see there. We're pulling off the black roof. We're pulling off the gypsum board because it's going to be a big powdery mess anyway. Putting a new 2-inch hardboard insulation on top of the metal that's there. And then there's going to be a new 80 mil TPO membrane that would be put back on top of that. That'll come with a 30-year warranty for the roofing system itself. They're going to get rid of the abandoned satellite dish that's up there to have some space for some panels. And then it's also going to come with new gutters and downspouts that'll go along with that same roofing system.
Hopefully 30 years from now, the FIM 2 won't say remove abandoned PV cell.
I hope it does not.
You just cut a hole in the roof, find out what's there?
We did. So we worked with a roofer and they did a core sample. So we knew exactly what we were looking at as far as membrane and what the underlayment was going to look like.
Is there a vapor barrier?
There is a vapor barrier under the roof deck that's currently there. Yes, Jim.
Yeah, so underneath the metal roof deck, there's actual insulation. So that insulation that the above.
That's what I was worried.
Yeah, there's multiple insulation planes within this building.
So on this new roof, how do you fasten the panels to it so they don't blow up?
So it's a ballasted system. So there's a metal racking system that sits with kind of a foot on the roof. Underneath that foot is roofing membrane to make sure it's not going to wear a hole in the roof. And then there's concrete ballast blocks that are put in the rack to hold it down. And additionally, there are mechanical attachments that are attached to the roof. So there's kind of a weldo-lit plate that's made with roofing material that has an anchor in the middle of it That is affixed through the entire roofing system into one of the steel purlins for the structure. And then that area around it is heat welded into the roofing system, so that way there's nothing that can leak, because the fasteners are underneath where the weld occurs.
And what's the
So
guarantee on that location, those?
that is going to be part of the roofing system warranty. So we're having the same roofer install those attachments. So it's 30 years on the system. So they're going to install the roof. They're going to come out and do a warranty walk. We're going to install the solar array, and then we're having them rewalk the system to guarantee that there has not been something has not ruptured the membrane or in any way compromised the system. And if for some reason, if something happens, somebody dropped a tool, we dropped a block, then that's on us. We will pay to repair that to make sure that warranty stays intact as part of that walkthrough. So that's kind of
a similar system to the system that's being currently installed on the PPW garage, and a similar process as well as far as the warranty inspections and follow-up inspections as well.
Correct.
The single source makes it easy.
Much easier, much easier, absolutely.
That's why we tie these projects in when you're gonna put solar on with a new roof, and then you do this right.
Well, and there's no finger pointing over who did
Right.
what, and it's ours to make sure it's going to be corrected. So next one was sort of the caulk removal and resealing of all of the window units at the building. You can see there's been some issues in the past, and I know there's been some water intrusion that's occurred over at DSS. The idea here is we would strip out that caulk, reseal those, as well as the EFIS joints themselves. And so the EFIS really means it's exterior insulation or a steel skeleton, so to speak. And there's gaps in between the panels, and it's to reseal those panels that are really, that's what is going to be your weather barrier on the exterior. So it's to strip and reseal those. Number 4 is a new building management system. So this is one of the old thermostats that's been there quite a while. And there is a building automation system there now, which is an old Johnson Controls system that's original to the building. There are no graphics that are associated with it. It's all text-based. And currently none of the setbacks are working anymore. That was something based on the age of the equipment. I know the facility staff was having to send somebody in on Sundays to make sure the building was actually going to be pulled down and ready to go for Monday morning. But as a result, the building runs as if it's occupied 24 hours a day. So there's no setbacks for heating or cooling season. Our new system would allow to have those graphics put in place to make it much easier. Similar to the systems that are already currently now over at the Public Safety Building, and we just put in down at DMV that allow for remote alerts. I know Brian and his staff, they could go ahead and change it from the phone. You can get it through a web browser. So to get monitoring, alarming, setbacks, all those things would be put in place as part of this project. And really, we're going to be getting the savings out of that based on those setbacks that currently do. So that's kind of that should be one of the nice plays, but will also allow some more comfort to happen, where if there's going to be a problem, we'll be aware of it rather than having to call in and try and worry about it that way.
Brian is here if you got questions on the.
Yeah, if you'd like to hear about it,
those,
he can tell you much
systems,
more.
Yeah, the DSS, like you said, though, for some reason, we just can't figure out through the controls how to keep it. If you let it go into a unoccupied setting, it will not return. And then, like, we've had several instances walking into the building at about 80 degrees. And then once the staff gets in, you cannot cool it. And it's like several times. So finally, that's what we had to do. We either lock it out and keep it as occupied forever, or like I said, I was sending a guy in on Sunday just to make sure it was still running, so we didn't run into a jam. Because like I said, it would start the day at like 82 degrees, and once people got in there, you're not cool, then it will not cool. So
the good news is we start the day at 50 degrees now.
No, it's just refrigerated. It's kind of,
I was just in your office. I think you ended the day at 50.
So the idea would be to increase some comfort and productivity, but at the same time get some energy savings by holidays and long weekends to automatically set back. And we also implement what's called an optimal start-stop, where when the building is going to ramp up, it takes a look at the weather forecast and the temperatures inside the building. And it knows, hey, if it was a really warm night, I need to start the air conditioning at 3:30 in the morning, rather than saying I turn it on every day at 5 o'clock. It'll say, nope, I won't get there in time. I'll start it earlier. Or if it was a very mild or a cold night, like when you get into September and October, it'll start it later when the day moves into occupied mode. So you're not running that equipment longer than you have.
It's all
to.
automatic.
Oh, it's all automated.
Yeah.
And so part of it is that we tune it a little bit. This isn't something where we slap it in and say, all right, guys, have fun. As much as there's going to be some issues and gremlins, and we'd want to tune the system to say this fits the use case, it fits the new equipment, and some of it you can't do until it's installed. So it's going to be an iterative process, but I think we worked with Brian on this and a couple of the other buildings as well to get them figured out and make sure everybody's comfortable with what's there. There have been some things that have been rezoned and stuff has been moved around. So the thermostat might be in one spot, but where the cooling is going is another spot. We'll have to figure that out once we get there and make sure it's correctly implemented. Which really goes hand in hand with the next unit. Oh, it's okay. It's all right. So there you go. So last year, I know one of the things that happened is there's 11 air handling units in the building. They're up above the ceiling. They look just like this guy. This is actually one of the new ones that was just replaced, even though it was ordered, I think, in March of,
I think it was May of last year.
May
We
of
got it in March
2022.
Yeah, February of this year.
It took about a year to get those two installed. So rather than try to chase the other 9, the thought was let's replace the other 9 that are the same vintage as the 2 that just failed. So we're looking to replace those other 9 with the same manufacturer Daikin units, so that it's all consistent throughout the building. But then all those will be replaced at least as a scheduled replacement rather than an emergency failure. If you want to hit the next slide, please.
Last year we ran out of temporary air all summer.
Yeah, we had those temporary blower units that were up in the space. So hopefully we won't need any of those. You may still be able to use them if we're cutting something over in between. But and I know they're coming handy a couple of other spots we may have needed them. But one of the items we looked at also here is, and this is a little bit of a change we made, is you can see right now there's 2 pumps here in this picture. One of those pumps serves the hot water to those air handling units. And one of those pumps also does the perimeter fin tube. So what goes around the exterior of the building to offset the skin load. Right now, there's just one pump that does either. And so if one of those goes down, you lose heat. We are going to look to put in duplex pumps so that way there's always a failure or there's a backup available in the event of failure. But the motors themselves are relatively new, but the pumps and the impellers are still kind of grody and original to the building. So new pumps that are duplex and are also going to be sized to handle the new coils as well as the new boilers that we'd like to install. Next slide, please. So same thing for the chilled water pump. You can see that guy is even grungier. And the main reason is that on the left, that is actually the backside of the chiller. So to get back there to work on that thing, you probably need to punch a hole in the wall that's behind it. So we're going to look to duplex this as well. So there's also a backup chilled water pump rather than a single point of failure for the system. Next slide, please. 8 is one of the biggies. I know the existing boilers that are there are atmospheric natural gas fired boilers. They all seem to leak a little bit one way or another. Right now, the one that's closest to us has to run to provide domestic hot water to the building, even in the summertime. And that causes a problem where we get ghost flow. So we're heating parts of the building that we're also trying to air condition, which is unfortunately not great for efficiency. So we would look to remove all of these boilers and replace them with 2 new Lochinvar condensing boilers. Condensing boilers are high efficiency and they condense your exhaust gases, and that's what makes them up into the 90s for efficiency. So we would go with only
late on outputs.
correct. They have I think they're a 10 or a 15 to 1 turn down. So even though the boilers themselves, there's only going to be 2, they can turn down to probably be about, I think, a 10th of one of the output of one of these guys. So we should have much better control that we're not going to overheat. Right now, the boiler controller for these, when it turns on, it fires all 4 boilers at once. They run for 3 minutes and they all go out. And then the cycle repeats about every 5 to 10 minutes or so. And that's how the building's been heating itself. So you have a lot of startup losses as you got to heat up the stack, and then everything cools down and it still pulls hot air up through those vent hoods. The new boilers are going to be power vented up through the same stack that we have there now. We're going to have PVC that runs up the same shaft, and they'll be sealed combustion. So they'll pull air from outside, not within the mechanical room itself. They'll exhaust up to the roof. And we should see a fairly significant amount of savings from that. Just not only will they not leak, but they're also going to be able to control much more tightly. And we're going to implement an outdoor air reset schedule, which when it's really cold out, it's going to make 180-degree water, but all the rest of the time, as you get into milder seasons, it's going to dial that way back. So you have to run anything else.
2 boilers can support the system that will replace the 4?
Yes, sir. So right now, these are 500 MVH boilers each. We estimate that really one of them is fully redundant, so the building probably needs about 1.5 million BTUs. We're going to put in 2 1 million BTU boilers, and they each have a fairly hefty turn down. So as they're running, they're probably going to stage together. But if for some reason one of them goes down for a bad igniter or a control board went down, the building on other than the coldest of days should be able to function on just one of those larger boilers, no issue.
At the same point in time, if there's only one zone calling in the building, one air handler calling, one boiler can idle, and still produce the heat you need rather than firing them all up and off.
Correct. And as part of the pump replacement, one of the items I did mention is we're also putting variable frequency drives in to vary the water flow in the building. Currently, right now, when there's hot water or chilled water flowing, those pumps run and they pump the same amount of water continuously no matter what. We're going to vary those speeds to try and not waste pumping energy. And now with the new control system, we'll be able to see what air handling unit needs the water, and we can ramp the system up as appropriate. So the condensing boilers play a little bit nicer than the older boilers do. So next slide, please. One of the last big ones is also the air-cooled chiller, which is inside right now. It's an old reciprocating chiller. The reciprocating compressors are very useful. They are very reliable. However, one of them's already been replaced. To get to the other one, again, you have to rip the wall out. And you kind of need 3 men and a boy to be able to get them out because they're not light and there's no means for lifting. What we are looking to install is a brand new air-cooled chiller, which will move the compressors outside. It'll also have slightly more tonnage. Right now, the system was originally rated for 70 tons, and we're going to move to an 80-ton unit. It's also not going to have R22, since R22 has been phased out. That's something that if you lose your refrigerant charge right now, it's a very expensive recharge because you can only put in reclaimed refrigerant. So it will move the majority of the equipment to outdoors, and then inside is a much smaller plate and frame heat exchanger. But that will move the noise outside. It will free up some space downstairs and should really help boost our efficiency. And again, we're moving to something that have a much better turn down on the compressors. So right now, these units kind of stage and they can do, these compressors unload, but they really kind of only have 25, 50, 75, and 100% capacity if both of them are running. This is a 30-year-old machine, so that level of control is getting pretty dated. So it should be something that should make it a little bit more reliable for some time to come. Last guy that goes along with it is, I know this is the one thing that looked pretty shiny in there, which is their current indirect water heater. This is what's running off of one of the hot water boilers that's run in the summertime. We're actually going to put an electric heat pump water heater, since the only hot water loads are just for hand washing. This will mean we can shut the boilers down for the majority of the summertime, and it's just going to pull the heat out of the mechanical room for it. So that way we should eliminate ghost flow and having to run that whole system just to let people wash their hands. Okay, so financials, where it's actually looking to get to. So where does this project come in? We had originally looked that we were going to be somewhere in the $1.8, $1.9 million range with our first estimate. From adding those other couple of things and some of the price creep that we all saw since we were still at the tail end of COVID, right now we're just over $2 million, getting close to 2.1. We are estimating we're going to be able to get over $100,000 between various incentives, grants, and tax credits that are available to the county. So some of these are incentives from National Grid. Some are a grant that the county has through your the Green Communities project for the solar array. And then also from the investment tax credit that was pushed as part of the IRA. I know the county does not pay taxes, but as part of the IRA that was passed, the county can now claim credits as a direct pay. So even though you don't pay taxes, you can get them like a tax credit from the federal government. Previously with solar systems, especially, somebody else had to own them, and then you had to do a PPA because a commercial entity had to take those tax credits. The county can now receive those as part of this project. So That's what's factored into that line item. After that, that puts us at about 1.95 million. We're estimating about $50,000 a year in maintenance savings. And this was from a discussion with Ron and Ray and Brian of, really, we would need to, you guys would have to put into the budget to replace those air handling units, the boilers one at a time, the chiller is going to come. If we were to amortize that a little bit, it looks like $50,000 and we would kind of spread that out. Our energy savings is around $18,000 a year, which I know is it's not a gigantic number that certainly pays for everything that's here. But part of that is that there's some portions of the building are fairly efficient, even though it's much older equipment. It's not a huge building. We also try not to be super aggressive, knowing that, you know, we didn't want to try and make something say, oh, you're going to save tons and tons and tons of money, knowing that some of this is just dated and you may run it longer and once it actually works again. So we're trying to be realistic with that. So it puts us at right around $68,000 for the first year savings. And certainly something to keep in mind is that works out to be about 39 metric tons of CO2 based on greenhouse gas reductions from what we did as part of this project. So I know that's a lot of me talking for a few minutes and figured I'd take a breath and see if there was any follow-on questions, comments, etc.
So if we decide to go with the plan or something like that, how long would it take to get everything? You'd have to go through a year or two?
Great question. Next slide will answer
Great
that for you.
question.
That's a great
segue.
segue.
Part of what we are looking at is assuming that this was to go to the full board next month and we had approval, we would really start to let some of our subcontracts pretty much immediately. And we would start working on the final mechanical room design and order the long lead equipment. We did check that the boilers are really a 4 to 6 week lead right now. And that's really would be our primary focus, to try and get the new hot water boilers in this year before heating season. It's a relatively straightforward installation based on the loop system that's down there. Coordinating with the building automation system, since that's our in-house group, that's how come that's listed as a 200-day window. There is the controls are going to start really early and they're going to take a long time to finalize, but that's okay. Really, once the boilers are in, we would work to do the chiller sometime in the spring, because the chiller is also right now 6 months lead. The building envelope we would do this year, as long as there was still time before the weather got bad. The roofer is the one that right now, you can see that roofing installation isn't listed until April currently. Their main issues, last year they couldn't get material. This year they have plenty of material and they don't have enough hours in the day. They're working on their backlog of things. So we're anticipating that that would be installed first thing as soon as the weather clears next year in 2024. If for some reason we have a very favorable fall, they may be able to pull that into this year, but that would be very weather dependent. If we have a really wet July and August, they're going to be pushed out just from not being able to work. As soon as the roof is done, we would work on our solar array. That interconnection will already be taken care of by that point in time. So it's really a matter of putting panels on the roof. And I would imagine we'd be talking this time next year about starting to close the project out. Really, the air handling units would be the one that would float the most, is physically getting those in and then coordinating with the building as to when we can disrupt the occupants. That work right now is scheduled to be done on second and third shift. So we try and do some prep work to not really work with folks and interrupt them during the day. I know that's something where those air handling units are above desks and office spaces. It is still going to involve some disruption, because I know those cubicles, the office furniture has its own warranty. We're probably going to need to move some of those out of the way. We're going to have to move a couple of folks around. So our team is going to work with the county to make sure that's fairly closely coordinated to minimize that disruption.
And our focus would be the boilers before heating season. That would be the big push.
And those are natural gas fired again, or?
Yes, sir. Yeah, they are. We did do a little bit of looking to try and see, was this building an option to try and electrify? Could we go completely away from natural gas? Some of those same issues in dealing with the transmission line capacity, that we were going to need new transformers, new switch gear. The lead times on the gear were going to be over a year, and it was a fairly significant increase in cost to be able to try and look at going completely electric in this building. Not necessarily a bad candidate for it, but it didn't seem like it was feasible with what we were looking at.
We're gonna save a ton of, energy though with this, so, you know. the new-
That is the idea, is we're really reducing the carbon footprint fairly
And
significantly.
we were staying within that budget, you know, that about $2 million budget too. We were
And can you say
sticking to
how
that.
long it will take before it pays back?
Well, right now, based on what we have payback, it's a little bit difficult to say only because of things like the roof. The roof is a fairly expensive component and the roof itself doesn't have a payback. We're adding some insulation, so it does have an energy benefit, but, that really is just a very large capital cost that we're trying to
really not
offset,
there.
so.
And who do you get to do the work?
So we have a number of different contractors that are doing the work for us. So the roof itself is, we're gonna be looking to use SD Carruthers, who they just did the roofs down at DMV Treasurers, and they just put on the highway garage. We've been working with Colette, as our mechanical subcontractor, who's done the majority of the mechanical work we've done here in the county. And the building automation system work is being done in-house by Centrica technicians, along with some folks from Brownell Electric, who we use as a trusted sub.
And we put scopes together, we bid that work out, we received those bids back, worked with Ray and Brian and Ron in terms of what we're doing.
Now, we're not just doing this to save money, obviously, because we run the quick numbers, it's gonna, this.
We're trying to-
It's gonna be an end of life before paid off.
Right, we're trying to fix the building though, I mean,
So this
that's.
is bringing the building up to
Right.
Yeah.
21st century.
Yeah, a big part of this, again, so the building originally was built in 1990, so again, a lot of the mechanicals, if not all the mechanicals, are at the end of their useful life. Again, similar with the roof itself, so again, the roof being replaced is because of the useful life of the roof, it's meeting that, so before we start getting major leaks and starting to chase those leaks, it makes sense to do it now since we're looking at a solar project. So yes, the main reason for this, just like we're doing in a lot of the other buildings, is trying to make reinvestment into the buildings, keep up with them. Mechanical systems, all have, lifespans that in most instances we're now beyond. But in doing so, we want to see what we can do as far as improve it, as far as the energy efficiency as well. So the main reason is to try to keep up with the buildings and stay ahead.
And that energy efficient gives us about 5% of the project cost and return on grants and things like that.
Brenda, you had a question? Yes.
I have a question on the solar capacity. So when the board pulls the trigger on this, do we reserve the solar capacity at this point so that we know we have it a year from now?
So, we currently have our interconnection application in with National Grid. Because that application was moving through where we had to submit a 10% design, which originally was 100 kW and is now at a 50. Once that's in, that holds our spot. And I believe we have 90 days to tell them, yes, we're going to do it, or no, we don't want the spot anymore. By then, the board should have decided whether or not it's something we'd like to do. If that's the case, then we'll submit our fee and that will hold it. And then they'll give us an authority to construct.
Because we've all been going through community solar campaigns where capacity has really been an issue.
Yes. Yes, so because we're at the 50, we fall under the concern about there being the capacity. It's considered that at that point, we're sort of not grandfathered, but we're allowed in without upgrades. So that will kind of shuttle us to the front of the line, and anybody else that's going to then be applying, they would have to factor in our capacity to upgrades on that.
Generator combo.
No.
So you could.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry.
Battery bank in the base.
Oh. No, he's asking about a battery pack rather than a generator.
That wasn't something we've looked at this point in time. Right now, you're probably going to be able to consume most of what you're producing, so I don't want you to charge your battery off of solar. But we have done some projects where we have looked at using batteries for emergency generation.
Yeah.
We've done it mostly for large pharmaceuticals and manufacturing where they have large production losses if they lose power. So kind of like a UPS system for a computer.
Right.
We've used it similarly, but at building scale. So it's something certainly if you'd like us to take a look at, that could be, not that it would even have to be as part of this phase, it could be a second phase to look at as an add-on.
No, I just saw some generator maintenance quotes coming up later.
Yeah, right, yeah, that's another.
I also want to just remind the committee that in the case of the Public Works Highway Garage, that array that's being located on that roof is actually producing more electricity than the highway garage is consuming.
Right.
So this actual location is one of the ones that we're interested in doing a remote net metering to again offset electricity costs. So again, although this array located on the DSS is only taking 20, or excuse me, is only associated with 25% of the total usage, we are over.
The median production.
Right, we are overproducing at, or will be overproducing at the highway garage, I guess, is one of the second ones. So that.
And you know, we did explore a little bit to wrap it into this project, but right now we've decided to keep it separate. But DSS, this location is actually a good place for us to have some EV charging stations for our own fleet vehicles in the future. You know, if the county wants to start entering into EV cars, which we do, you know, to have some charging stations here. We'd look to try and do that as part of this project. There's different money from National Grid, and again, the National Grid doesn't want to take our solar electric, but they want to sell it to us. So they'll give us permission to put in EV chargers. So you know,
They'll even pay.
Do we have to pay?
Right, they'll even pay for that.
Substation though?
No, there's.
Only if we want the DC fast.
Well, yes, yeah. I don't think we want DC fast chargers there. We just want level 2 chargers there for fleet vehicles. You know.
Yep.
We did explore a little bit the idea of trying to have level 3 there, but it seemed to be the consensus was there wasn't enough people that would go there and then go shopping in Hudson, and you have to have them open to the public in order to get the kind of money that it takes to build them. So there's better locations for a level 3, but level 2s could go there for us in that parking lot. And I first saw it as it's the end of line 3-phase, and it's there, but
it is, and they would most likely drop a new service for you for EV. They would give you your own new little transformer and a meter pole, and they would just run it out right there along the parking lot, along the edge.
We had a quote on it from one developer. I never pursued it too hard, and we looked at doing it with this project, but due to financing, it seemed better to keep it separate.
And NYSERDA is talking about bringing back their rebate for chargers, which currently has expired. They ran out of funding. But there's talk that may come back to life. And if that's the case, then you can get a rebate from NYSERDA for the chargers, and National Grid can use their Make Ready program for actually putting in the infrastructure to support them. So
we'll continue to work on it. Yes. Right.
So did you do an energy audit? Do you know what the R factor in the roof or the walls are?
So the walls themselves, I want to say, we did look at that, and the walls, I want to say are R16, but I need to double check that again. The roof actually, because it's got multiple insulation planes, is a little bit difficult to calculate because there's the interstitial space above the second floor, but there's above the ceiling tiles, there's batt insulation, there's fiberglass there, and there's also batts in the ceiling and the purlins, and there's additional layer on top of the roof structure that's there. So what we're adding is going to contribute, but because then you're losing or gaining heat into an interstitial space with another insulation plane that's not perfect, it's pretty hard to run all the exact calculations where it's going to go. Then it's not as straightforward as saying, oh, it's definitely R30.
No, the cardboard is probably better than the gypsum that you're.
Yes, ma'am, significantly better. And because it's also a high density board, it's a very good support for what we're going to put on top of it with having all the ballast solar. But it also boosts the insulation value. I want to say that it's R2.5 per inch. So I think we're adding R5 and maybe R4.5.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so this is ultimately the last slide, and this is, you know, part of the process with these UESC projects through National Grid. So we're here right now, we're delivering the final scope to you guys. Assuming the county moves forward and accepts the scope, the National Grid will issue an implementation task order, which we can then, once the county signs, start moving on that schedule that Scott just showed you, ordering materials, scheduling construction, and beginning that. And, you know, at the end of it, you can see commissioning, training, ongoing support. Same process we followed for the previous projects. They've gone very well and smooth. It would be the same process for this as well. And that's the end of that. Are there any further questions you guys have for us since we're here?
I don't know, any other questions for the team? Ray does have a resolution for us to consider later on to see if we want to move this on to full board, but prepared a resolution to.
Well, it has to be done, right? Bottom line, 30-year-old building, you know.
Something has to be done. Something has to be done.
We've been going through this for how many years, so.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Get out of your hair and let's.
We've had very good luck, I think, with Centrica. They've finished most of the jobs on time, on budget, and the work has been very good. So from their
I'm
comment.
glad to hear that. We aim to please. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
one phone call, like I said, they answer the phone immediately or, get back to you real quick. So the service is excellent. Whenever I have a problem, they get back to me immediately and they're right on it. So, just another thing that to bring up with this company. Justin's been very helpful, when I need help, so he gets right on it immediately. So.
It's a good, Brian, then, oh
Right.
boy. Oh boy.
Yeah, Brian,
Yeah, you guys are a pleasure to work with as well, honestly. We work with a lot of counties, a lot of customers. And it's between Ron and Ray, Brian, you make it very easy, so.
Good.
It's a
Thank you.
full team effort there, for
No,
sure.
you're doing a good job, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Thank you
right.
for your time, everyone.
Next up, we have highway agenda. Tony. You didn't fall asleep back there, did you, during that?
I know, I'm a little boring. I'm throwing on a little, sorry.
See, the solar brackets are going on your roof now, so.
Good night, guys.
Thank you very much.
All right. We can continue in our mowing of the airport and roads. Continuing with our bridge repairs, hot mix patch in the road still going on. We're in the process of replacing, repairing a bunch of culverts and drainage structures on County Route 9 in Gallatin, and that's ahead of the upcoming shoulder reconstruction and paving. We began paving on, I got that in here twice. Began paving on Route 7 down now Ankrum, Gallatin. We actually finished that. It was finished yesterday. So that road is paved and completed. Next will be shoulder back up and go from there. Still doing some work up at the Greenport transfer station. And we completed 2.6 miles of hot in place reclamation on County Route 5 in the town of Canaan.
Thank you, Jesus.
And that'll be the next road being paved. Tony was gonna go home and say, like, you wouldn't believe what they called me at work.
Well, just think we can work on that quiet since he's done that work.
Yeah, and that's not even paved. That's
I
just,
know.
and we completed 3.9 miles of cold in place recycling on County Route 7 and Ankrum. Again, that was ahead of the paving that has since been completed as well. We completed 1 mile of paving. It was just a blacktop overlay with P&L on County Route 7D in the town of Hillsdale. And we completed the guide rail reset on County Route 11 in the town of Taconic. That was to raise the guide rail to the proper height due to years and years of the road being built up. The guide rail, you could basically trip over it. It was that low. So we brought that up to specs and that's been completed. We've also completed the rest of the guide rail installation on County Route 9 in the town of Chatham, or town of Canaan, I should say. And that was the last few sections of rail for that stretch of roadway that needed to be completed. So that's all done as well. And I don't know why I got County Route 7 on there again. I got excited. Got a lot of complaints over that from that road over the years. So. We hired one part-time laborer, watchman, and we have 2 employees currently out on workers' comp. New business, the annual safety training day for the county, towns, villages, and city of Hudson was held on June 13th and 14th at the fairgrounds and was another successful year of safety training. And then I have 2 resolution requests.
Okay.
You're right. And the first one, and I believe we got all the numbers down here correctly, Ron?
Yep, I made the change on this one here, so.
Yeah.
We'll double check it.
Authorization to increase the CHIPS expenditure line and the revenue line by $2,426,810.09.
Move it.
Second it.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
That was it.
For those of you that missed it, I am making a change on here, Kelly, the last year's funds available were off a little bit in the written resolution, so.
Yeah.
I'm giving you a new number, so.
After painfully going through with a calculator while on the phone with Ron, trying to find out where I went wrong with the numbers.
Somehow they didn't die, but anyway, we made them die.
We made them. And then the second one is to award the bid for pavement marking finally to K5 Corporation of Rockland, Massachusetts, who was the sole bidder.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Is this the one we couldn't get bids on? It was a
Yes.
high bid.
Yeah,
did it.
we bid it, when we bid it the first time, the bid came in crazy.
Yeah.
We bid it the second time and nobody bid on it. So we finally, after going back and forth with some of the other counties to see if they had piggybackable bids, and the problem we were running into is they all do it differently than us. They bid these things with everything included, the traffic control, the paint, everything. So that the company just comes and does it, whereas we purchase our paint through OGS and usually provide, our own follow trucks and stuff like that. So we really weren't able to piggyback off of anything. So we went out to bid one more time and we got this K5 Corporation out of Massachusetts. They were the only ones that bid on it, and they came in high as well. But at this point, we really don't have any choice. So
No, it's not the first time. No.
yeah, they're even higher than the first.
They were.
Yes, yes, yeah.
How many miles do they have?
Well, we do, we have about 268 miles. With the pricing, Chris, I think we came up with about 200,000 that we can do.
About 200 miles.
But we got 200 miles, yeah. About 200 miles that we can do out of that, so.
Let me ask a question.
Yep.
If they're higher than the original bid, can we go back to that company and ask them if they don't hire?
They have not even reached out to us. They didn't bid either. With the next two bids, they didn't bid on it.
Is it insider information if I go out and buy a paint truck in next week?
No, I was gonna say, why don't we have our own,
Yeah.
And because of manpower, it takes out trying to dedicate the crew.
Okay.
Tony, 125.
All you have to do is, you don't have to do it good.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, it's $125 a mile for center line,
Right.
and then $125 for each.
Each
35 miles.
Yeah.
375
miles.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's 3 miles of wild weather in mine.
Correct.
And
Each row?
And we actually,
Hold
we
on one
increased
time.
that budget this year because we knew by the end of last year that it was gonna be a little uncertain as to who was actually gonna be available to bid. But we didn't increase it enough. And when we started looking at, like I said, those other counties that did everything, they started sending me what, their pricing was, and I'm seeing like $500, $600, $700 a lane. I'm like, well, that can't be right. But it turns out that's
That's a complete
everything.
job.
That's complete.
And there's no way we could do shared services with the DOT because they have their own truck, right?
Well, the thing is, we're already doing shared services with all towns, and I think a lot of times with the DOT, they get equipment, they'll get a piece of equipment in the region, and they have it for a certain period of time and it goes somewhere else. It's kind of hard to,
It's state, but it's.
because we had talked about if we weren't able to get, a company to come in and do it, at least reaching out to the state and see if they could come in and do our new roads, and at least our new pavement. So we have some, marking on it.
Do you remember what the original bid was?
It was about, I feel like it's like 110, 115. Yeah. Yeah, 115, maybe 115, 116. Yeah, I think it was $8 or $9 cheaper than that.
How many miles we do?
Generally, we do all of them in 260, about 260.
So if you cost all this out, how much would it be for the total project?
375 times 200.
Yeah.
750.
Quick, in your mind, Brenda.
That's all I could do to get the numbers right on the last resolution.
Well, that's important.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but no, when Chris ran the numbers and I ran the numbers, he figured about
275,000.
Yeah.
Hey, Tony, if I can just for a second, something to keep in mind too, for the future. The way we do it, and I think the reason we're having so much problem getting people to bid is these companies make no money on a county like us.
Yeah.
Because we supply the manpower, the plow trucks, we supply the paint, so we get it at state bid cost. Where these companies make their money
is on the paint, not on, so they're buying the paint and upping the value of the paint. We're gonna have to think in the future, unless, you know, in order to get somebody to bid, I think we're gonna have to kind of switch to the way some of these other counties do.
Let them
And that's
make some
gonna be
money out of
sticker
it.
shock.
Yeah, because we started adding up, like, with what Green County, what their bid was, Rensselaer County. And we were probably at least $200,000 short in our budget to do our roads.
We got spoiled with Atlantic for a lot of years.
Yeah.
They took good care of us and we worked hand in hand, but
And that old snub nose Ford, whatever that was. 1960s.
The nice thing about Atlantic, and like Chris said, I mean, they knew the area. They would come in, if we didn't have people available to go with them, they knew the roads, they just go and do them. Even though that wasn't part of their bid, you know.
Do the towns work with you guys for this, the same company to do our roads?
Well,
How does that work? I'm just asking, no?
it's, they've always just kind of, when Atlantic was in town, we would give them a heads up that Atlantic was coming to do the road striping. And then they would just set up with the towns, because they'll go from county.
yeah, they
road
have a
to county
special
road.
relationship with the towns. That's not gonna be with this new company.
Okay, so then we're gonna have our supervisor's gonna have to
Yeah.
do some homework.
And we
Okay.
discussed it, we discussed it at the last, town association,
He knows, okay.
I've kind of tried been keeping them informed throughout the process as we're at, and we don't even know, like I said, it's a new company. We did reach out to them to see, how they operate, and they basically said they do what's in the bid. So, you know, we'll have to provide our own, supply trucks, you know. Atlantic would always come in a flatbed, they'd load the paint onto it and they'd go out. So we'll probably,
Figure that all out, okay.
we'll have to do all that. So it's gonna be, we're not really gonna know until we get them in here and do it, you know. They seem to be a solid company. We, you know, they included a letter with it saying that they're, you know, they'll do whatever we need them to do, and, you know. So we'll see.
Do they come in and do it all at one time, or do they come in as the roads are?
Well, we normally do 2 rounds, and usually that first round is completed by now.
Okay.
We'll come in and try and do all the roads that we're not doing any work on and get them out of the way.
Right.
And then they'll come in again late summer, early fall after we've done all the paving.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because if they're coming a distance, then they're not paying for hotel rooms or anything longer than they have.
Right, yep. All like that.
All right, good question.
Thank you,
Tony. Did you get a chance to take a look at the intersection of Count Ready and 9G? Now we're talking about that roughly, I think it got right into it. Any chance that could be?
Whatever became of, Tina got involved in it too. Didn't she?
Yeah, I reached out to Tina.
Yeah.
Tina said that she was gonna take a look at it, and after that, I did not hear
She
back.
just got back from vacation.
Did she?
Yeah.
She's
So I'm
gone
sure
for
she's-
10 days.
I mean, it's a matter of
Right.
100 feet, really. That's
Yeah.
terrible. It's very terrible. It's a very busy intersection across school.
But we need them involved because of.
Technically, it's under their jurisdiction.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
So is that something one of you guys can follow up with it? and look
Yeah,
into it?
again, we will. She was gone for,
Yeah,
10 days, so. So I'll follow up with.
I have a question for you too.
And I was just gonna say, I never really got anywhere with you. With the tennis court. Remember you asked me about the tennis
Just
court?
to go look at it and see
Yeah.
if it's worth it. What the? What do you want me to do? No, crap. I didn't know
Yeah.
if you had, just look at, tell me if
All
I
the
can be
time.
patched or not.
Yeah.
Because you got a grant coming to replace it, so we're gonna tear it out, but maybe in the interim,
Right.
there is something I can just put down there on the crack so that people don't. I know what he does, but he knows his stuff. He has to be able to know stuff. Maybe these guys wanna play tennis.
Because they do make specific track repair for.
Okay.
I did look some of that stuff up.
It's called shared service.
Fix my road, and fix a tennis court. I guess we're going to resell our tennis courts for a year and they won't show up to do it, so I don't know.
No, I asked him if he knew it, because we put stuff in it that didn't work. So
Right,
stuff
right.
that was in it, but we're gonna tear it out. I just don't wanna go with expensive,
Right.
paving the whole thing over for half a year and then tear it all
Tear it all
out.
out.
So, if not, they make do with what they got. That's the
Yeah.
way I look at it. Thank you.
I was super excited. 2/10 of the road gravel.
Okay, right.
Yeah,
That's good.
Good, right?
That's good.
Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to solid waste. Oh, that was Bill Lane. Finally.
This is the moment. So we have two before and afters. Spread it around. And as you see, we have no striping, so if I supply the spray cans, if anybody wants to come up and assist us with spraying some lines after that $375 ticket. Okay, so project that we're working on, food scrap program, the volumes have been increasing in a lot of our stations, thanks to the Climate Smart community with their advertising. We're offering demonstrations again to anybody if they're interested in coming up to see it. Wendy tomorrow is actually giving a demonstration to Assembly Member Dee Dee Barrett and her staff. We're going to be coming up to see it in operation. We're also going to be expanding the food scrap program to our county facilities. So the jail and the Philmont Kitchen are going to be coming on board in the next month. We're going to be meeting with the staff and Brian to figure out how we're going to start implementing that. But we are ahead of schedule in our solid waste master plan, so that's a good thing. Hazardous waste, next one is going to be October 29th between the hours of 8 and 12. It's going to be out to the fire training center again. Bags are out. They have been distributed to all the stations. We are in the process right now. And by Friday, all the clerks should have theirs, so all the tags will be removed. And we'll be discontinuing those tags as of January 1st.
They're great bags.
They are
Free
great.
stuff a lot. Very
$1
heavy.
bag, you get a
Don't-
$3 bag.
Paving, as you can see, we are done finally, at least with this phase of it. Yeah, okay.
Can I get it? Right here?
Yes, that's where the administrative office is going to be going in the fall. So we'll be finishing that up probably, I'm guessing, in the spring. We opened the compactor up on the upper end today, and we do have some traffic issues that we are working out. We're coning off right now until we do the striping. All the signage is being constructed now, in addition to a map. So when you first pull into the station, there will be a large map. Everything is color-coded by building with a letter and a color. So you know which building to go to when you enter the station. Hours at the station, the Germantown station is now open on Wednesdays and Saturdays full day. They're going to be closing at noontime as the request of Germantown for their event, the fireworks event. Kinderhook will be closing on Fridays starting September 8th. Signage is up there, and we started noting it on our website. Resolution requests, there's two of them. The first one is authorization to fill a part-time laborer's position due to resignation.
Move it. Second. Got a motion and second, all in favor? Opposed?
And the second one is authorization to fill an account clerk position and abolish one senior account clerk position. This is due to a resignation. A little background on that. The senior account clerk has left for a higher position in another county building. We've exhausted all the list for that position, and we need to get somebody in. The nice thing about this is that it does now create a structure so that people, once they are in, there's an ability to move up. And that's what everybody's looking for.
And there was a list here.
Yes, and there's a list for this position.
That's a cost savings.
Yes.
Move it.
Second. Motion and second, all in favor?
I know.
Yeah, you leave that or what happened to go through the discussion?
And that's all I have unless you have any questions.
But I do encourage everybody, take a ride through Greenport. If you haven't been taking a ride through there, the paving came out wonderful and the whole project came out wonderful. Thank you, Ray, Jolene, and Brian, everybody that was involved.
Facilities and highway and Ray have been absolutely amazing.
I know, 10 years ago, we were getting complaints on how disarray it was up there. And, it took a long time with getting the other top level building built.
Nassau and chips on their whole side.
Quick
All right.
question.
Okay.
I don't know if this is the broken, I don't know if you've been thinking about this, or Ron's talking about this, but I know this issue is gonna come up going into budget season about trying to find some cost savings.
Yep.
Have you been able to start looking at some possible ways to save?
We're going to talk about that prior to budget. There are some ideas and things in the works that we have been working on actually to generate revenue. From a cost savings measure, you're kind of limited. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. We are down to the least amount of staff that we've ever had. We're having issues, as with everybody, with supply chain, getting trucks and vehicles. And at one time, our fleet was right where it needed to be. We're 2 years behind, just waiting for a single XA truck. Costs are going up. The only thing that I can see, when we had the meeting with the supervisors regarding closing stations, nobody wanted to do that. Nobody wanted to cut hours. Instead, they invested $3 million, which was desperately needed after 30 years. And I think in COVID, it proved that we do have a concrete existence in this county. We just, now that we have a facility that's operating, it gives us the opportunity to bring more material in from contractors. So that's what we're working on. I think it's going to be very feasible in the next few months, and hopefully the presentation that we give right before budgets will support that. Okay.
Fee structure, I mean, it's.
It's too high. It's high. So if you go higher, you're going to lose business. We're unique in the fact that we're a middleman. So we don't have a landfill. We don't have an incinerator. We don't have an outlet. So we have to rely on haulers to do that work for us. We do have some options. We have a rail bed across the street that's not being utilized. It could be utilized for a number of things in the county. And if we bail and rail, it's a cost savings. We could bail and rail garbage, scrap, gives us opportunity. So I think moving forward, the committee has to take a serious look at how invested do you want to be in this, and what opportunities do we want to take moving forward. Okay.
Deeper discussion.
Deep discussion.
Yep.
Is there any potential revenue associated with the composter in terms of selling compost or?
Yep.
Okay, so on the end of selling it, probably not. And the only reason is because the nutrient is going to change with every the composition of that material is going to change. One day you can get more meat, more vegetable, but there is an opportunity, and we kind of really don't want to go there yet, but for businesses to bring that material in and charge the tipping fee.
Okay, like our recycling permit, would generate revenue.
And that will be part of the presentation that we'll give before budget time.
And that capacity would be much greater than the residential capacity.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
That's why we're kind of trying to go into this slowly and see where it is. And that's why Jolene, I thought, had a great idea of starting to take some of our own county facility, the jail and the kitchen, and let's see how that commercial activity works for us. And can the composter keep up? And then can we take on?
Yeah, and that way we get an idea of volume that we'd be able to collect, and then, eventually take it one step further. And do you want to go there? Okay. We are going to be surveying using the Chamber of Commerce to the local businesses in the county to see who would be interested, what kinds of volume, and what they'd be interested in paying. Would you pay? I mean, there's no sense setting a fee structure if nobody's going to pay for the material. The stumbling block, of course, you're going to have is that they're going to expect us to transport it, which we just can't. We don't have the manpower. We don't have the appropriate containers. But if we make it cost effective and feasible, and everybody is looking at their carbon footprint, we should be able to get some of that tonnage in and be able to get a revenue source for it. And this is part of all DEC's plan. Their new master plan addresses all this, so we'd be ahead of the curve and be able to give an outlet to the college, to the hospital, etc. Okay.
So I need a paint truck and an auger truck, right?
Yeah.
Dual
Hit it
purpose.
hard, hit it hard.
And a whole lot more employees too, yeah.
Okay, is there any other questions?
Nope. Thank you, Jolene.
Thank you.
Up next we have Brian with facilities.
Gotta get like a vending machine where you stick $1 and it opens up the garbage can, you can put it in, that'd be pretty.
Yeah, there you go.
Man, scares me.
You should.
You're not a good golfer.
I'll tell you about that. I'm coming down Friday now.
Oh,
So I'll see you Friday.
There we go.
Overall work show, we 325 installed the plaque for the Betty Young dedication for the building. We just started a little office renovation on the third floor.
they got a couple new hires coming in, so we had to kind of stop what we're doing to try to make some extra offices available to them. So that's what we're currently doing right now. 401, as you know, it's on the west side. We enclosed the window wells on the side there to try to limit all the rain in there because the drains just aren't working, so we're just gonna work on that as we go. 560, the energy project is basically complete. There's a couple little things we got to do left with it, but all in all, it worked out really well. So, let's see here.
So that new chiller is up and running and everything is functioning okay?
Yep, everything's working. I'm just waiting to get my test results back from the chemist we submitted. It came down about 2 weeks ago, so I'll know more. Like I said, it's solid waste. We've been installing, we just finished doing the wiring for the compactor and for the new operator shack, and basically done with the railings, the safety rail that we put up. I just got to get some more kick plates for the one entrance. Other than that, we're pretty much done up there. Veterans, we've been working with him. He's gained some new space. So like for the pantry, we had to do some moving around, and then I had to get into an agreement with the landlord so we could just run some wires so that there, there's no problems.
No leak words.
Yeah. Let's see here. Water and sewer had a little incident at Leg 8, but basically we had to clean everything out, but everything's up and running. Met with one of the reps from the company, and so he showed us a couple more tricks to do with everything, and going to get me some more supplies that we should have so we can make our own repairs on it. Basically standard maintenance and everything else. So, and I do have some resolutions.
I got a quick question then before we go there. So did Whittier ever go and put their grinder or shredder into the system yet? They haven't.
I've spoken with McKay, who's the contractor, and so my understanding is that he now has an agreement with them, so we can go ahead and install that.
Okay, so it's in the process.
Yeah.
Okay.
The hangup was completely on their end between the contractor and.
They're waiting for the engineer to draw it.
No, that has all been done and
Okay.
that was approved.
All right.
We accepted what was proposed finally.
I remember that.
And really it was just a financial issue between
Okay.
the contractor and.
Well, is the damage to the pump significant? So they have to be repaired.
No, all it was, we get a lot of, sludge sometimes going up and we couldn't keep a prime. So we had to take like hoses apart and we got one running, but I called the guy and said, listen, you got to get down. We only got one running. So he came down the next day, and it was like a couple other parts that he showed us to open up and clean to get the prime back. And
No damage.
no, there's no damage. But like I said, we were out 2 pumps for a little bit until we got it primed and going. So it was a little, the guys actually, they started at 11, didn't get done till about 5:30. I was, and so they worked right through break, just kept constantly trying to get it going. So yeah.
All right, yeah. Might as well stay doing it now.
Yeah, exactly. No sense eating after.
Right, no.
So one of the resolutions that are looking to seek permission to accept the maintenance agreement with Milton Cat to service standby generator of Mount Ida.
Move it.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Looking to accept the maintenance agreement with Milton Cat to serve the standby generator at the public safety building.
Move it.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
The price is a little bit higher on this one, just because the actual generator takes 75, I think, gallons of oil, and that's why it's so expensive. Port, let me see, I had it written down.
How big a motor is that?
Yeah. So, but yeah, I wrote it down wrong, but that's why, because you're just like, you'll see, this is why it's a lot more expensive on this one than, and then the last one was,
Still
enter
20
into
gallon crankcase. That should power Hudson.
Oh, she's a big one. So we lighten the load on it so much now, from the energy upgrade. So that's why right now working on with the rep from CAT, trying to get a proposal together to try to, put generators at all, but especially that one. It's just a long time trying to get all the figures back and forth, but, we're looking at trying to replace that, and we could actually lower the size of it. Because like I said, we've taken so much load off of it through that upgrade that when they did the tests, you don't need nothing nearly as big, but I'm just waiting to get numbers, and because I'm working with Rob Lopez, and he was talking about there was a grant available, and
Years ago, bigger was better.
yeah. So like I said, stuff is on the table, but just waiting a long time to get figures back. That's what I'm waiting on. So this one is just the agreement for the one at the DBW Highway Garage. So
I'll move it.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor?
That's all I have.
Any other questions for Mr. McDonald?
I love the name McDonald. It's like McDonald had a farm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go, what game is it? Hey, you-
What's that?
No?
That's a good look at it, though.
Oh, no, he don't. I wouldn't ask him.
Golf course.
And we saved the best for last.
I don't know about that. Evening, everyone. So starting off with bridges, the Stuyvesant Falls Bridge. So the formal authorization to proceed for the project has been issued by New York State DOT. So we're just trying to get that meeting scheduled. So that meeting would be between the county, the consultant, as well as DOT. But they have approved their contract, and we are set to move forward on that project.
Great.
Valley View Bridge, DOT has also provided a formal concurrence of award. And so we are in the process of signing contracts. Contractor has been actively moving forward as far as getting some of his paperwork together and looking at alternatives, including the potential of utilizing the county's temporary bridge, which is referred to as the Maybury Bridge, and actually putting that in. So that way we don't have to do the stage construction. So again, we'd still have passing over the creek. But then it would actually reduce the potential cost because of the duration of the construction. That helps us out with the overall construction, so they don't have to mobilize, demobilize multiple times. But it also helps us out as far as the construction administration, because the consultant doesn't need to be on site as long. So we're.
And when do you expect construction to begin?
Well, we may put the Maybury Bridge in this fall, depending upon the steel issue is the big one.
Right.
So we're looking to potentially start it. If we get the Maybury Bridge in, they would then start their demolition this winter, and then start the new construction as far as the actual bridge in the spring. And most of that is dictated by the steel, because again, it's not anticipated that we would see steel before December of this year, unfortunately. Again, that's supply chain issues. In addition to,
Is the steel from China or?
no, it's actually American. Yeah, it's actually American made. Yeah.
It has to be if we're gonna.
Correct, because of the federal funding associated with it. Also with the bridges, we're working with the engineering offices, working with the highway bridge crew on some maintenance items that they can take on as well, which has been great to work with them. They're very energetic and excited about taking on some additional responsibilities, so that's great to see. Fish and Game Road, County Route 18. The road segment between Joanne Drive and Tisch Hauser is going to be closed starting July 5th. And so that will allow the installation of the second large precast culvert. The last one was done last year. So it's anticipated that section of roadway will be closed for 5 weeks. The contractor's already gone ahead, put up the message boards. So that, again, anybody as far as traveling the roadway will see
We've been
that.
telling them.
Yeah, and we've actually, engineering department has sent out information to emergency services, COART, so on and so forth, making sure that everyone is aware that it'll be closed this job.
Quick question on that road. When you pave the finished paving job, are you starting it at the Hudson Fish and Game Club, or is it down further?
I'll tell you, you are so on tonight between, leading into things. I actually have a resolution
Oh, okay.
to discuss that item, but so
The actual federally funded portion goes from Demita Drive to 217. There is a section between the Hudson Rod and Gun Club and Demita Drive that is not part of that project. But we are going to look to fund that to get that section done, because from Hudson Rod and Gun Club down to the intersection to 9H is actually in good shape.
Right.
So that section's not. My understanding is that that section was part of an older project that was federally funded, and it can't be funded again. So, and that's the reason it wasn't originally included. But I do have a resolution to move,
I mean, it's
transfer
not,
some
it
funds.
doesn't seem like it needs a lot of work on it, does it? I mean,
No,
they
really,
expand it.
it's resurfacing, and we're gonna be cutting shoulders and creating shoulders. It's
Not
not gonna
like-
be
not like the rest of
extensive,
it.
not like the rest of it, exactly. But I do have a resolution to transfer funds from the bridge line item to roads to fund redoing that half a mile of road.
You got my vote.
As far as culverts, continuing to work with the consultants and homeowners regarding the two Bridge of New York culverts, more importantly, County Route 7 over the Rojan down in Gallatin. So we've scheduled that informational meeting. So again, since it's federally funded, we do need to have informational meetings, much like we did with Copake, much like we did with Clovert, with Fish and Game Road, prior to actually moving forward with the final design. So we're scheduling that with the town of Gallatin. I've actually met with the property owners because there've been some takings that are required. So made sure that they were aware of that, and doing the same thing for the County Route 7 culvert replacement up in Austerlitz as well. As Brian mentioned, DMV treasurer, that work is been substantially complete. The contractor was actually just back today doing some minor punch list items, but the system is up and running, and the staff has received training on the management system. DPW garage contractor continues to work on the installation of the solar array. It's anticipated that that work will be done in mid-July to the end of July, weather depending.
You see the brackets are going up there now. So,
Yeah, yeah. So one of the items is the interconnection regarding a panel that may slow the actual interconnection. One panel, not
Right,
a
okay.
solar panel,
Right,
but
a
an electrical
connection
panel.
panel.
And again, that's because of supply chain issue. So although the array may take place and be completed in July, we may not be able to do the interconnection in that
Flip it
final
on and generate
changeover
power,
until
yeah.
September.
Isn't that ironic?
eBay can't
Solar-
fill in the gaps.
Solar's being shoved down our throats and our infrastructure.
And yet we can't do it, you know.
Well, that's the part that I wanted to mention to everybody. You know, I know we were talking about the DSS building, and I just want to make sure all the supervisors, you know, take note about the infrastructure issues. This will be a reoccurring theme moving forward as we continue, as the state
Right.
and the federal government continues to push towards electrification. Infrastructure, it's not there yet.
Well, most of us have had a utility representative in our office saying, I just wish politicians would talk to engineers once in a while.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because they're deadlines that have been set and they're not realistic because the infrastructure is not there. Not to get off topic. At the airport, the FAA formally provided notification for two projects as far as funding, at the airport, totaling amount of $350,000. The county share of that will be 5%. The two projects are the taxiway lighting design, which the consultants, surveyors are currently on site doing that work, but then also the apron construction located in front of the terminal building, and that is anticipated to take place this summer. But the formal notifications regarding the funding came out from the FAA, and again, they were $350,000 to the county. Commerce Park, the water system, the engineering department, we've completed an updated engineer's report regarding the installation of the water storage tank, as I presented to the committee last month, as far as that potential location. So at this point, I do have a resolution, a pair of resolutions. One would be authorization to submit for a WIA grant for the installation, construction, and design of that water tank. And then in addition to that is for a negative declaration that's to take place at the full board meeting, because that is one of the requirements as far as the actual reapplication as well.
And that's one of the ones that Rob has to read through with us, or you have to read through with us at the full board.
Yeah, so at the
We
full-
can recommend to go there, but.
Right, so and again, not only that, yes, so to your point, Correct. We do have to stop the meeting if you would.
Right.
Go through that process as far as reading through the full long form EAF as far as part 2.
Right.
And then that particular resolution needs to be voted on separately as well. Resolutions. First resolution is authorizing the chairman of the County Board of Supervisors to sign all documentation associated with the WUA grant for the installation of that.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Thank you.
You can always apply for a grant, that's what you need.
And that project is also, was budgeted for this year and for next year as well. It was included in last year's budget. I just want to mention.
You had some ARPA money for that too, didn't we?
Correct, yeah, there's ARPA money. Second resolution is to proceed with a negative declaration associated with the seeker for the installation of that water tank.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Now, we did settle on the ideal location. I'm in discussion with the property owner. I've actually reached out to 2 property owners right next to the area. They've been a little lukewarm as far as the idea. So the fallback would be located on county property, but I'm still going to continue to pursue, the offsites because those are the preferred locations. Next resolution is transfer of funds from the bridge construction force account to the roads line item to resurface.
This is you, Kippy.
I got Reed down there. Didn't you just get $2.5 extra million? Why are you gonna send it out of your bridge account?
He's already spent it.
Huh?
He's already spent it.
That's a lot of money for a half a mile.
Whatever it takes. Trust me.
Yep, I got a motion and a second, all in favor?
Next resolution is authorizing the change order to Colliers and Sons to actually complete the work in the amount of $175,400.
Second.
We're doing that under the other contract, the main contract, it's just a change order to
It'll be a change order to that.
their contract.
But again, there will be no federal funding associated with it. That amount
Yeah.
is coming directly
I
from.
mean, that's why I question it, part of that same contract. Okay. All right, do we have a motion and a second on that? All in favor?
Next is a resolution authorizing the purchase of mobile traffic signals in the amount of $70,000 through New York State bid. So just a little background on this. One of the items that we're running into with a lot of the bridges that we're working on as far as the repairs, and the county highway bridge crew is willing to take on these repairs, which is wonderful. But we're running into deck issues. Actually down in Claremont as far as Buckley Bridge. If you could travel over that, there are deck issues. We're fine. No, we don't want to close that one. We're running into deck issues, and once we get into a repair, those repairs could take weeks over time. And so to avoid detours, we can utilize these mobile traffic signals so that way we can keep one lane open, repair one lane, and then swap it over and continue. And that would eliminate the need for detours. We actually looked at the possibility of renting these units. We can rent them, but they're $7,000 per month as far as a rental.
You need
So-
2 of them?
Yes, correct. There are 2.
48,000 a month?
Yeah, they are for 2. Yeah, there are 7,000. But the nice thing is that these units are solar powered, but they also have a battery a generator backup as well. It switches over automatically. So in the middle of the night, if it does require power, the generators automatically go ahead and start up.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Thank you. The last item is a resolution authorizing the supervisor to enter an agreement to implement the task order with Niagara Mohawk and National Grid. With Niagara Mohawk, doing business with National Grid regarding the implementation of Centrica Business Outline Energy Equipment at the Department of Social Services building. And that's in the amount of $2 million. Again, if you took a look at the presentation today, their cap as far as expenditures, and this is after incentives, was just under 2 million. But last year during budget cycle, we did include this $2 million as part of the 2023 budget. So it has been a budgeted item. So I'd like to move forward with that.
Second. A motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
And that Ray, just, I spoke to Jim the other day and he said to get back to you. I don't know if you talked to him, but originally that was gonna be part of the 5 million surplus from 22. Jim seemed to think that there was some, he put it in there as borrowed money.
Correct, so.
He said there's some advantage to borrowing because of DSS and,
Correct, as far as how that is funded through DSS, but actually the 5 million, we were looking at the bridge project. So really the 5 million, we were looking at 3 bridge projects, if I remember correctly, that 5 million was allocated.
okay.
So,
I thought part of it was gonna fund this originally.
no, it was originally when we first started discussions, before looking and getting better numbers on the cost of the bridge replacements.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
All right.
However, as I got further into the budget process and working with Jim, we
Jim
realized.
said you were in control of it.
I'm glad that he's so confident.
Right, you know.
But yeah, it is.
But anyway, it's budgeted.
It is
I know
budgeted, but
it
it
was.
is, it is budgeted, but it would be a bonded item.
And he actually explained that there is some advantage to that because of the way we get DSS reimbursement. It's better to have it bonded.
Correct, rather than money out of pocket.
Question, you and Tony, I'm not sure which one. So Fishergate Road, when that should be finished by this fall?
Yeah, target date is, end of November.
Okay, so you guys will be putting up speed limit signs and everything. I don't know what speed limit will be on this road at this time. Do you have speed signs you can put up right off the bat as soon as it's opened for traffic that we can? If not, we have 2 in Clover that we can put on there. We're willing to offer them, because I know people are gonna take advantage of the speed on that. You know how that is. And they're brand new road, they're gonna be going like a bat. I can have the troopers there. That's the biggest complaint I got from people now. They're gonna have a new road and they're all gonna go like hell.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'll bring the troopers in to watch it. I can do that between that and the sheriff. But I was thinking the speed signs, we have 2 to offer.
Okay.
If you want, we can throw them up there, for a month or so.
Well, I'll speak with the contractors. So again, they're still working on shoulder work and so
Right.
forth, so we're not gonna be putting up new signs, but, I'll mention to the contractor about getting the new speed limit signs, because it is part of their contract, to go ahead and put new signs.
You know,
for the entire-
it's the same as it's always been. I think it's the same, like.
I believe it, no, actually, I think it's changing. I think that there are increasing in some instances.
Oh, are they?
Yeah,
Okay.
based on the section. But
Okay.
we will notify them and see if they can get those up early.
Yeah.
And I'll notify you so that way we.
Yeah, I mean, we can coordinate with us. If not, like I said, then I'll coordinate with the state police and sheriffs too.
Okay.
Because that'll be my problem. That'll be my headache when this comes, it's all done. But,
Okay.
If I get it.
Whenever you pave the
fast-
road, people go faster,
Oh,
don't
God.
Did they ever really slow down on that road?
No, are you
No,
kidding me?
right.
No, I was thinking about speed bumps on that road, and if you go fast enough, you don't have to bump. I'm telling you, it's crazy.
Question,
Yes.
since you brought it up, Buckley Bridge Road, is there any plans to do something on that before it goes to complete crap and you close another bridge in my town?
Yes, so that's one of the bridges that we're working on. And so that's pre-stressed boxes that are used there. And so there's a lot of material heading down, infiltrating through the deck. So actually, we're gonna look at taking up the asphalt, putting down a membrane and then repaving that area. So that's.
So it could be fixed, not closed. So how
Right,
we-
just
how
tell
we
me you're
making
close.
out? I only got 2 left, so how we making out?
We're all
with the other-
closed, we don't have a problem.
Where are we at with that
Yeah,
one?
the final edits came back from, so regarding Pleasantville. The final edits came back from the Army Corps of Engineers regarding the memorandum of agreement between ourselves, New York State SHPO, and the Army Corps. So we can now send that back to SHPO, and we can start working on getting that signed.
We were there last month, we didn't do anything with that?
The final edits were done.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's in SHPO's hands, but the engineer is continuing with the design work, so it hasn't halted his design work. So right now, we still are anticipating to go out to bid late fall, so that way we can start construction first part of spring in 2020.
And you will be letting me know when you're gonna come down to town and explain
Yeah,
this.
yeah, I just want to have that signed MOA in hand when I come down to the town. So yeah,
They
we'll be
can come
holding
to
it.
Stuyvesant and tell everybody why we're not doing anything with that bridge either. Everybody's upset with me on that one too. It's,
Couple more, I don't have any left, so I don't have anything to talk about, so.
That's what I need, it'd be perfect, with no headaches.
and I tried to tell everybody we wanted to fix Rossman before we start on Stuyvesant Falls, but
He wants to hear that.
no.
Last question, you know anything about tennis courts?
A bit.
Maybe
Well, you
should
want to
go.
build a new tennis court in Claremont?
Oh, Chairman.
Hey, do you realize they notified us the other day since 2017?
I thought a motion to adjourn.
All right.
Pickleball.